All right. So we're gonna do the War of the Spark. Just gonna do this thing again. See how far I get this time. Scan through the community review. Just give my opinions on the grades that we see in the community review, and maybe turn off the sound of my computer so you don't get all kinds of beeps and boops. Um, all right. So this is kind of a weird set because it's got all these planeswalkers that are they all have they all have continuous abilities, and I think the presence of a mass. We'll get to that when we get to that. Is also going to make the set kind of weird. Um, so a lot of the evaluations here, and so this is just kind of just a general feeling. I'm not gonna. All evaluations are wrong that I give are wrong, but just to say, but we're just going to go down and talk about these things and just give general feelings on it. So the first card, so we're just going to go through by set number. First card, Karn the Great Creator. So this is a planeswalker which basically only it stops artifacts of your opponents. You know, it just can't be activated. What the heck is the name of that card that it's I cannot remember that little tiny artifact. It and you can turn your artifacts into creatures with power toughness. One of the oldest Magic things, turning a non-artifact creature artifact to an artifact creature with power and toughness. That's the +1, and the -2 is you can get an artifact from outside the game, reveal it, put it into your hand. All of these things are pretty much completely useless and limited. There might be some rare scenario where you could bring this in, but it's so hard to imagine how you would ever want this card. There are not enough artifacts in this set that are large enough to make the +1 worth it. I mean, it only converts them for one turn, so it's just you're getting one creature for one turn. There aren't enough artifacts of your opponents to make shutting them off worth it, especially since it's only activated abilities that shuts off, does not shut off continuous abilities. And if you had an artifact which is good enough that you want to retrieve it, it's limited, you're probably going to have it in your deck. It's not like you're going to have this toolbox of things. So community has this. I mean, officially it's a D plus, but you can see there's a really long bar and an F. This is like, other than the people who always grade things stupid. There's a lot of people who just like can't put it in their minds to rate a planeswalker down. I think, even though there's just nothing here, but this is just it's like you want to grade this a D minus or fine. It's not even a D though. It's just super F. Ugin, the Ineffable. So he's six mana, and you get 4 loyalty. Colorless spells you cast 2 less to cost. That continuous ability is almost completely useless. So we have to go through the other abilities, and the +1 is you create a 2/2 face down card, and when the token, you exile a card face down, and you create a 2/2 token. When that token leaves, no matter how it leaves, you get the exiled card. This is a really good +1. Also, the -3 is destroy target permanent that's one or more colors, which is pretty much every non-land thing, other than a couple little things. So this is a really good, some really good abilities, but the price is really high. So people have it at an A-. I'm just not sure that it rates that high, just because it's slow. It's really slow for limited, but the things it does are really powerful. So, it's just one of those things. I feel like a lot of these planeswalkers, I feel like a lot of them are just really slow, and people. I mean, this isn't exactly for 6 mana. This isn't exactly Elspeth giving you 3 tokens, or I mean, it does give you a creature and a future card, which, I mean, it's really good. So Ugin Conjurant. So this is X for a creature which has X +1/+1 counters, but every damage it takes, you take every damage it takes, you take a counter off of it. So if it takes 3 damage, you take 3 counters off of it. People have this at a C, even though it's kind of like really it's a C plus if you look at the big bar on here. That's probably about right. I think people. There's two things. I think the drawback is bigger than people are going to like give it credit for. This is a long ways from just being, and I think like I was watching just some of this stuff you managed to watch, like the loading ready run pre-release, and it's like you can chump block this card because when you chump block it, you're making it far less powerful, and I don't think people get that. So if someone makes it a 5/5 and you throw your 3/3 in front of it, suddenly you've changed this thing down to a 2/2, and it's going to take a whole bunch of it. It's now just a grizzly bear, not a huge card. So think about that with that card. Think about blocking this card and chumping it. It's just like it's playing by a different set of rules. Ajani's Pridemate here is an old one. Every life you gain, it's a grizzly bear. Every life you gain, you get +1/+1 counter. It's a should keep track of where on my screen I need to scroll to. It's a good card. One of the best things about Ajani Pridemate, one of the reasons why it's so much above so many similar effects, is there's no cost on the triggered ability. So it's not like when you gain life, pay 1, put a +1/+1 counter. Which is when you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on it. There's a bunch of life gain in here. A lot of it kind of stinks though. So I don't think it's as good as some of the other sets. We'll see though. Maybe the life gain turns out to be just fine, but people have it at a C+. That seems like it's fine because it doesn't take a lot to make it much better. Battlefield Promotion. It's an instant for 1 and a white, and you get a +1/+1 counter. Creature gains first strike in the turn. You gain 2 life, which is fine incidental life gain for Ajani's Pridemate. It's fine as a trick. People have it as a C. I really like first strike on tricks. I really like the +2/+0 first strike, but so first strike even makes up for not like a lot of the red ones where you just don't gain any toughness. It's a counter, so it's a permanent plus. C, maybe C-. I don't think it's a C+. I just don't want to make that a trick. C+, but but that's kind of the range, so people have it from C+ to C-, and that's definitely the range this is gonna land in. Bond of Discipline, people have it at a C. You'll notice a real range of scores here from a bunch of people, it's a huge range from B to D. It's a D. I mean, it's people like, so sleep is a better card generally. The lifelink is like you're trying to kill your opponent. That's the point of playing the tap all the creatures. So if you gain life back, it's not. It's like, well, I didn't win. Now they're going to attack me back. It's not really that great. It's better than not getting it, but you don't want to be playing one of these cards and not winning the game. So this just isn't. It's not very good, and it costs 5 mana to tap all creatures you control. 5 mana. That's pricey. It's pricier than sleep. I don't like this card. I think it may be more of a sideboard kind of bring in the right matchup, but I don't like this card very much. Bulwark Giant is a D+ rated here. So it's a 6 mana 3/6. When it enters, you gain 5 life. It's a very slow defensive card. I think the idea is that you're going to put this card in your deck with a bunch of flyers in order to hold down the ground, but not win on the ground. It's not like D+. I'm never sure whether to rate these cards at a D+ or a C-. They kind of end up getting drafted late, but they'll often end up in your deck to fill in if you don't have other good 6-drops. So it's playable, but meh. Charm Stray here is a D+. It's a 1/1 life link for 1, which is not enough in most sets, even with like gaining counters. And when basically every time you play another one of these, all the old ones get +1/+1 counter. that's just nothing. It just doesn't matter. It's just meaningless. So like the average here, D plus, D minus to me. You know, there'd be some deck that wants it somewhere for some reason, but like you're not going to get 3 of them, and even if you get 3, it's just not that good, or 4 or 5 or whatever. Defiant Strike. So Red Blue has a theme where if you know it wants more instants and sorceries in your graveyard, or it wants you to play them depending on what the card is. And Defiant Strike is a 1 mana draw card, and it does everything very little. I think if you are hanging out with part red cards or part blue cards, then having a Defiant Strike sitting around is a thing you'll want to do, but it's so air, you generally won't want to have it, because it won't, unless your deck is just somehow loaded with First Strike, it won't let you win. It won't save you a card. It might take down. It might you'll 1-for-1. You'll essentially like 2-for-2 essentially, playing Defiant Strike sometimes, and other times you just won't get much out of it. So I think because it's kind of like it works with an off theme thing. I think it's like a D plus, to D card, but there are decks that definitely could have it. Divine Arrow, it's like, it says B minus, but it's like people just keep going up. People don't know where to put removal, and I don't know where to put removal. But the largest bar is C plus, and it's probably a C plus to B. It's C plus to B minus. It just depends on how we really feel about the stats. I think with Amass, it's going to be so much worse, and I'm sure this is intentional, than you're just destroy target attacking or blocking creature, because you're going to have these large attacking or blocking creatures. But for that reason, I feel more like a C plus. But you'll definitely like first one. It's just like they're going to get worse the more you add in your deck. But C plus seems like a reasonable area. Enforcer Griffin. So we've got people have this pretty strongly at C. I honestly like these ones slightly more than the average card. It's like a C.5 plus. I just think so 3/4 is just so much better, and obviously there's a lot of things that do 4 damage. There are a lot of things that do 3 damage in this set. So 4 toughness is just this much better than 3 toughness in this set. A 3/4 flyer is a thing that can just kind of win a lot of games. And it's not hard to cast. It's 5 mana, but it's only 1 white. It's not a great flyer. So like I said, C.5 plus. Finale of Glory. Okay, so one thing about all these finale cards is that if X is 10 or more, which might happen in limited, but the difference is like the difference between putting 10 2/2 soldiers into play with vigilance and 10 Serra Angels into play is very little. I mean, yeah, the Serra Angels are going to win you the game doubly, but it's kind of like, that 10 thing is just like win more. It's, I think, for the most part. I mean, it will save you in certain situations where you need to cast it this turn, survive a turn, or whatever. But it's such a minor thing, I think. I mean, how often are you spending 12 mana? Really, 12 mana. I mean, it'll happen, but it's almost like you just might as well have had a fireball. But so let's look at the realistic numbers on this one. Like casting it for 3 mana isn't good enough, but you can desperate. Casting it for 4 mana is a little weak, but it's playable. Casting it for 3, 5 mana is not bad. Casting it for 4, 6 mana, that's pretty decent. So there's a large range of outcomes. So I think this, and you can keep going up from there, obviously, 7, 8, but I think given the large range of outcomes on this one, and given the amount of utility it provides, people have this as B plus. I can definitely see this as an A minus. It's good when you're behind. It's good if you need to get ahead. It's only bad if you just don't have any. You're only 3 mana or whatever. So it's a really strong card. I think it's just really strong. Gideon Gideon Blackblade is one of the signature cards, perhaps the signature card in the set. So basically, he's in a sense a 3 mana 4/4 indestructible. On during your turn, and that's pretty good. You'll just beat the heck out of your opponent. The only thing to say is there are a lot of ways to kill planeswalkers in this set. And now you can keep giving him, if I understand right, because just help me just make sure I've got the rules right. You could just the indestructible. If you give him indestructible, it would last until, because it doesn't matter that he's not a creature anymore. You'd still have indestructible. It would last. So you would play him, give him indestructible if you want to, or you can give something else indestructible. Run things down. I mean, the point when your opponent is most likely to kill your planeswalker is on their turn. So it says indestructible until end of turn. I thought it was till next turn. I'm sorry. Ignore me. Just ignore what I said. I'm an idiot. I'm not an idiot. I'm a great person. Darn it, people like me. So yeah, I guess that doesn't matter. You can't save it. So yeah, you're gonna come down. You'll give something else of yours indestructible and crash it in, and then you'll just keep crashing it indestructible. If you get up to 6 or over, you can start exiling random things, which is great. It's a very powerful card, but it's beatable. I think, and there's a good chance it doesn't accomplish much the turn it comes down. Didn't I turn off the sound? So, and I don't know if it's. I mean, I'm always unsure, and it's in the A range, and for that point, it just doesn't matter. 'Cause you're just not gonna. Sorry, just a moment. Weird. Sorry, just a moment. I have to deal with some stuff. We'll deal with this. Oops, that's Combat Manager. You can see all of Combat Manager. I'm going to, I'm going to switch off screen here. Hey, I'm back alive. So yeah, Gideon Blackblade. It's some kind of A. It's probably just not worth worrying about exactly what kind of A it is, because we'll figure that out as we play. Gideon Sacrifice is some kind of D. It's maybe an F, maybe a D minus. So the thing about Gideon Sacrifice is the one positive is it costs 1 white to kind of screw around with combat. But it's one of these things where we've seen so many of these effects, and setting them up is difficult. And if it's going to cost you 2 cards to make this thing work, and someone can interfere with it midway through, someone can blow up the creature and just completely ruin your setup, and you can just blow yourself out. And so you have to average more than 2 cards to make it worth it. And I just don't think that's going to happen. I think he'll get blown out too much. I think good players might be able to hurt bad players, but against other good players, you're just going to get hurt. And so there's no point in cards that are good against bad players are not really good. So I don't know. Just there might be some scenarios where you can invent. There might be huge board states where this makes sense. So you just absolutely need to do it. But it's not a fog, okay? Because you can, if it works, you can, a one-sided fog is so much better than a fog. But like I said, these complicated cards like this just so difficult to set up. Gideon's Triumph is an interesting card. So you target opponent sacrifices a creature that attacked or blocked. And there's a bunch of text about a Gideon Planeswalker, but since it doubles it up, but since that's mythic, whatever. People have this at a C+. I don't know that it's quite that good, because so often you're always gonna get the worst surviving, attacking, or blocking creature. Now you can do it at the beginning of the attack, at the end of the attack. If your opponent's only attacking with 1 creature, you get that thing. But like, you notice it's got the little picture of the army dead right here, and I think it's going to be really good against Amass, because people are going to be trying this big squishy Amass attack or Amass block, and they're just going to get blown out by this card sometimes. I just don't know that, like, when your opponent has the choice, I mean, you've got to manipulate the situation, and your opponent, a good opponent, will know that this card exists and might add additional attackers or blockers just to get around, this card, which might not work for them. So, I don't know that it's a C+. It's just, it's a solid card, but I just don't know that it's that solid. At least playable, very playable. Okay, scroll back up because this is the way this works. All right. So God Eternal Oketra is a 3/6 for 5 double strike. Now, just on that, it's well into the B territory. And whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 4/4 black zombie warrior with vigilance, which kind of, it's all these zombies that get created are usually black in most of these sets, except unless we're in Amonkhet, I guess. But anyway, which is a good ability, a great ability, but it's still the question for the A plusiness of it is that what do you get if it dies? Now, if it dies or is exiled, and this is all these gods, all 5 of them, you save it, but it goes 3rd from the top, which means there are 3 turns. So how do you beat the gods? Well, you kill them every 3 turns, because they don't really have any defense against getting killed. And you're not really going down cards. Now, do you have enough removal to do that? Well, maybe not, which is why they're really good. I just don't know that like, when I think of the A plusiest of cards, I want a card which actually does something the turn it comes into play. And that may just be me being far too picky about what's A plus. but it's largely irrelevant, right? Because this is a great card you're going to pick up. Um, basically, every time you see it, will move you into that color. Um, you know, Grateful Apparition is an interesting card on its own. A 1/1 flyer for one, for two, it's not enough. So one thing they said, if you read some of the design, that they wanted these tokens to be quests. So the things that proliferate, they don't come with tokens on them. You generally have to do other stuff to get tokens on the creatures. So it's kind of a build around card in a sense, in that just if you don't have a significant amount of token +1/+1 counters, not tokens, counters, or the planeswalkers, it helps it out. It's great with the planeswalkers. Then it's not going to do much. But it can start doing an awful lot early. So is it a C plus? Is it a B minus? Is it a B? I don't know. I'm I'd hedge C plus B minus around that part, but it's a pretty good card, and it's the kind of card it's you start building when you see this card, because you can do a lot more with some other things. Ignite the Beacon. There's a huge range on this card. At least nobody's sticking in the A plus category. It's rated C minus. It's a double planeswalker tutor. It's an instant. That's great. I don't know. There are a lot of planeswalkers. You're gonna have them. So I feel like the range will be just how many planeswalkers you got and whether or not, because there are a lot of bad planeswalkers. It's like, if your planeswalkers are just bad, you don't want to spend a 5-mana tutor to get 2 average cards in your deck. So I don't know. I feel like it's lower. I feel like it's more of a D thing, and it's more of a situational card. Certainly sideboard in that slower matchups with planeswalkers where it becomes clear the objective is to build up and beat that way. And I think there will be a lot of those matchups. So it's not. It's a rare card. So you're not gonna have to spend that much time thinking about it. But it's not. It's it certainly doesn't excite me. People have this at a D. It's a Ironclaw Crovad. It's got a neat picture. I don't know. Big giant ox thing. It's a 2/5 for 4. People have it as a D plus. I like it much more in the C minus range, because I think there are a lot of flyer decks that really want this card. And this is exactly what they're looking for. The thing which holds the ground very well. 2/5 for 4 is completely reasonable at that. It's not exciting build around, but it's decent filler. Lavrune Enforcer is a tapper, 1 mana, which is a great price, 1/2, whatever. Spend 1 mana, so it does cost you, and tap to tap target creature with converted mana cost 2 or greater. So the one thing that this card misses is amass armies. So for the most part, in a normal set, you would just say, oh, that catches nearly everything. But because of amass, you're going to have a lot of large creatures that you care about that have mana cost, 2 or greater. I think that's kind of the design here, is that it's a tapper which doesn't catch amass. And there's a lot of this set warped around amass. Still, it catches a lot of stuff, does a lot of stuff, and your opponent will only ever have 1 amass creature. So B minus, sure, I like that. Loxodon Sergeant, I don't like this card. It's a hill giant with vigilance, and it gives, when it enters the battlefield, it gives everyone else vigilance. I think the question is whether or not that's a C minus or a D plus ability, because I think just giving everybody vigilance is rarely. I don't know. It's just from my experience back in was it Cons? No, we were looking back to Battle for Zendikar, where you had all these rally abilities, and you had rally ability give everybody vigilance, and you could give everybody vigilance an awful lot, and it's still just like bleh. So we've got this overpriced Loxodon Sergeant, who gives everybody vigilance once. I don't know. I think this card's a D plus. I think you'll put it in your deck when you need 4-drop things, but Makeshift Battalion. It's a 3/2 for 3, which is like C minus D plus zone. But when it attacks and at least 2 other creatures attack, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Yeah, I'll just say C. It feels like a C. It feels like a card in the white deck with counters that is kind of weak sometimes and works other times. It would be much easier if it was easy to go wide. I don't think it's as easy to go wide in this set as other sets. Martyr for the Cause is a 2/2 for 2, so it's already like, I mean, like a 2/2 for 2 is already just like Grizzly Bear is already like a C minus, just. And when he dies, proliferate. I don't know. People have him at a C to a C plus. I feel like, is that enough of ability to make it a C? Maybe. I'm not super excited, but I suppose C. Just when thing dies, especially in like this white, you're not sacrificing creatures. I don't feel like this is an easy. I don't think this is an easy thing to do. Parhelion 2, Judgment Parhelion. So we have an 8 mana vehicle. So 8 mana for a 5/5 flying first strike vigilance crew 4. That's terrible. But when it attacks, it creates 2 Serra Angels that are attacking when it attacks. So it attacks huge. People have it around a B minus, I guess. Yeah. You need a slow deck a slow flyer deck that lives long enough to spend 8 mana, and then you need to crew for it. But if you attack with it, like, you're super winning. You just have a ton of material, and it's going to be hard to kill it before it attacks. But you can. So you can, though, the black common removal spell, -5/-5, that's enough to get it. So, and if, you have sorcery won't work, but instant speed removal, kill it before it attacks, All right, we have Pouncing Lynx, a pouncing primitive web browser. As long as it's your turn, it has first strike. It's 2/1. In the past, these have performed better than I thought. I'm rather concerned about it here because of the presence of Chandra's Pyrohelix. I think it is the one that does 1 and 1 or 2 together. That's going to make a lot of these 1 toughness things more liabilities than they ought to be against red. Which wasn't the case with the soldier in Guilds of Ravnica. I don't know. People have him a C plus an awful lot. I feel like he's just going to be. I'm concerned about his liability level. That's it. C minus. Prison Realm, B plus. When Prison Realm enters the battlefield, exile target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. So for 3 mana, and you scry 1. So for 3 mana, get rid of everything but the gods, which will go away for. Unfortunately, you can't permanently get rid of the gods with this, which I think it would have been better if they had made it such that you could permanently get away with the gods, because I don't like repeating board states, but. People have this at a B plus. It's very premium removal. It's premium removal, not like the super starriest. But I think B plus is about where you put this. Yeah, I think pushing it higher. I want anything to higher to be a threat, which just wins the game. Rally of Wings, widespread on this card. Big bars down the way through. For 2 mana, you untap all creatures you control, and flying creatures get +2/+2 until end of turn. I mean, white has a lot of flyers, but I don't. feel this reminds me a lot of the other Gideon card. I feel like you'll get people with this, but and you can untap anything, not just flyers. But I'm if there was a real whole pile of flying tokens in this, I would feel different. But there are not. So like D. Ravnica at War. Exile all multicolored permanents. People have some. The average is C minus. This is a huge spread from top to bottom. I think it's probably a D minus, a card that you'll find a situation to bring in, but there are not enough multicolored permanents consistently to make this card work. Maybe you could say it's a sideboard thing when your opponent has a ton of multicolored permanents, but even then, you won't be exiling everything that they have, just a couple of planeswalkers and a couple of creatures or whatever. And you'd have to do it in situations where you just didn't have them, so D minus. Rising Populace. It's a 2/2 for 3. That's Pearled Unicorn. That's not good. Whenever another creature or planeswalker you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Rising Populace. I don't know. See, the counters matter a lot, and so maybe for that reason it's a C. In the past, these ones have always been a little bit iffy, but C, yeah, C. Like the other counter gatherer. The biggest problem with this card is it's crappy when you're behind. It's just you have to be behind and then start losing more in order to catch up with it. So that makes me want to rate it lower. And does that guy have a picture of Liliana? A little hand-drawn picture of Liliana? That's just weird. All right, single combat. Single combat! Yeah, so basically with this card, for 5 mana, everybody ends up with one creature or planeswalker and then can't cast another creature or planeswalker. I don't like this card. I feel like you get to choose your creature. So it only solves the problem if you have one good thing and they have lots of crappy things, but even then they've still got a blocker. They get to block for a turn probably. I just don't like this. I just don't think you ever want to play this. Maybe some odd sideboard situation. It's D minus or something. I don't think this works. It's not a Wrath of God, and we've seen it's like that 4/5 whatever it is, the guy from Kaladesh, 4/5 for 5 that wiped out everything except everybody kept one creature and one artifact. It was not a good card. It was not. But this doesn't provide you with the creature. All right. Sunblade Angel. It's a 3/3 for 6. People have this at a C+. This is because it has flying, first strike, vigilance, and life. I think this card is so much worse than the 3/4 for 5. What are you people on? It dies so easily to all the removal in the set, and it costs freaking 6 for 6 mana. You just get this thing. It's just yeah. If they have no response to it, it begins. It can first strike its way through and just begin ticking stuff up, but it loses to the 3/4. It loses to that card. You have to have additional support to get it through. It's weird. It says it comes from the Parhelion 2. Why isn't it a 4/4? Why does it anyway? For this huge 6 investment, your opponent is going to spend 2 or 3 mana and get rid of it. And they're going to do this all the time. It's going to happen so often. You're just going to be sad-faced. So, I feel like this card's like a C minus. So this is the cards that begin tough to evaluate, these stupid planeswalkers. Because they are so often non-cabsy. They don't affect the board state. So this one for 3 mana, you get hexproof, and you get to create. He's got 5 loyalty for -2. You get to create a white wall. I don't know. I feel like people have this at a C-, D+, C-, D+. Sure, you know, it's very defensive, but it can create more defense. You know, I just it may be D+. Maybe the D+ is the right option. It's just very defensive. You need like. It's just those walls it creates are bad, actually. I forgot. I was thinking the walls were better, but they're only 0/3 walls. It's creating walls of wood. Like on the turn you play it, you spend 3 mana and you get a wall of wood. And you get 1 more wall of wood later. This card's like a D. Speaking of walls of wood, for another 3 mana, you get a 0/3. This one could actually attack, though. And you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Actually, this is like... I feel like this is actually like a C because it accomplishes the token thing, which is so important automatically. For 3 mana, 1/4. It's like that counter is important. Maybe it's a C-, but... Okay, Tomic Distinguished Advocates has a tremendous amount of flavor text. It's designed for standard, but it's also a 2/3 flyer for 2 white. People have that B- to a C+. You know, I think it's a real good card in that regard. You know, like I said, all the text is basically flavor. I think that may be affecting people to move it down. I feel like this efficient of a flyer at this price is important in this set, and it's important to white. So I want to give it a B-. Topple the statue. You got to take down that statue of bad guy Nixilis. Tap topic permanent. If it's an artifact, destroy it. Draw a card. It's kind of air. I feel like it's a D+ to a D. I feel like if you're in that situation again where you need to get the instants and sorceries in your graveyard because you're on the white-red or white-blue, then that's kind of what you want. But it's so airy, it kind of feels like a D+, D. Trusted Pegasus. So we've got another one of these Pegasus coursers, but instead of a 1/3, it's a 2/2. Now, that means that it's going to die incidentally more often, and that may be the design in that it's more powerful and dies easier, but it's still pretty potent at what it does, and it's still a 2/2 flyer for 3, which is already probably a C+ card in the way these sets work. So B-, I like that. I'm the kind of guy that likes to roam around, 'cause I'm the wanderer, So prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control. For 4 mana, for that ability, it shuts off a lot of stuff, but exile target creature with power 4 or greater. I feel like this is mostly, I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing. It's like, it's a real reasonable rate on getting 2 exile 4s, but you'll often not want to exile 4. The prevent damage is kind of off. I don't know. I mean, with the white, you'll proliferate and you'll get a lot of stuff. It's almost like a card that might be a C+, might be a B-, but you're gonna have to pull it out a lot. What you won't pull out a lot is Wanderer Strike, which just exiles target creature, then proliferate. And if you cut off the then proliferate, then you would still play this card. And it's just, people have it at a B-. It might even be a B because it's so important for getting rid of the amass to have some of these cards. And, the proliferate's just pure bonus, Last white card is War Screecher. People have it at a C because it's a 1/3 flyer with a really expensive mana dump bonus. For 6 mana, you can get every other creature and tap 6 mana and tap it, which is important because it can't use it when attacking. Other creatures you control get +1/+1. C to C-. And people have it to C to C+. I don't know. we'll see how it goes. You know, once again, I should be saying like there's a range of how this card will turn out. So I'll be right back, and we can talk about Ashiok Skulker. Just a moment. Let me just shut off the. Trying to handle multiple things, just like you do try to spend several hours streaming, and you know. All right, so let's deal with this stuff. Ashiok Skulker, 5 mana for a 3/5. Spending 4 mana, it can't be blocked. People have this about a C. That's about right. It's kind of a crappy set of stats. The ability is expensive, but sometimes it will just be an utter pain to deal with. Kind of goes in the Flyers deck as an alternate evasion form setup. You know, not and also can be kind of defensive on the ground, but has enough power to go through. But once again, kind of clunky at the same time. So C. Augur of Bolas. So this is for a specific deck. It's for, you know, it's 2 mana for a 1/3. Look at the top 3 cards, reveal an instant or sorcery, put it in your hand, rest in the bottom of your library. You have to have a lot of instants or sorceries to try and hit frequently on this, right? So, because if you hit one out of every 3 times, it's probably not enough. I guess that's what you're looking at. So I feel like, you know, those I feel like it's more of a C, but maybe it hits enough to be a C plus. Maybe, I mean, those decks that want it, you know, they're going to want it, you know, pretty good, but not everybody. It's not like a card that everybody wants. But, you know, Aven Eternal. This one has a relatively small spread, and that's kind of interesting. It's a 2/2 for 3 that's flying, and I already said that's already kind of like C plus card. But it does also amass as 1. So amass. Okay, if you already have a zombie, so if you do not have a zombie army, okay, well, an army, which will always be a zombie army, you create a 0/0 zombie army, and then whichever zombie army you have, if you put however amass however many +1/+1 counters on it. So the first amass spell you get always gives you a token of that size. Later ones keep increasing the size of that army. If the army dies, you start a new one. It can't fizzle. If somebody kills the army in response to amass being on the stack, it'll just start a new army. So there are some pluses and minuses to that. Part of the so your we'll talk more about this, as we go along, but you're investing an awful lot in one army, and if there's a spell which removes, kills the army, it'll just remove everything. Sorry, just more handling of very important material. So you get all this amass in one place. You can just get blown out, and I've already seen that. Just the only play I've managed to watch is the LLR pre-release, which no disrespect to them personally, it's not the greatest play, but it's you're off now. You're off in a situation though where you can have a lot of amass cards, and you may need to blow up an amass, so before it gets to a certain size, because a lot of the removal is not, doesn't handle any size. Now this one though, it's just straight up pretty good. People have this at C plus, but B minus. I like it more to B minus. I just think this is just a good card. I just think every blue deck is going to want this card. Just works for every blue deck, right? It doesn't do anything spell specific, but a lot of the amass stuff is spell related, and so you'll want amass. So B minus. Bond of Insight. Kind of a larger spread on this card. It returns up to 2 instant and or sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand. I don't know. C minus. I get so unexcited talking about these return cards. We've seen so many of these that just don't work very well, but this one's broader in terms of returning instant or sorceries. And you want to cast instant or sorceries again and again and again in the blue deck, so you expect to have more. So C minus. I just don't think everybody wants it. I think even among the blue decks, it's not the first thing you want. Callous Dismissal. Okay, so it returns an online permanent in amass 1. This is not as good as drawing a card or whatever. Root beer. But it's normally this sorcery speed return, sorcery speed, boomerang, non-land boomerang, it's not really great. But amass 1 kind of pushes it up a little bit, and returning a non-land permanent kills that other opposing mass army. So I think you'll need this in a lot of situations. You might just pull it out, but it's a question of whether or not getting rid of that amass is enough to make up for the rest of the kind of crappiness of this card, because there's a lot of crappiness. It's just terrible against other stuff. I don't know. I think it's a C. I think people are pushing too hard on just what it does to the amass. I find the card interesting. I think it's important, but I just think it's so bad when they're not amassing. Commence the end game. This spell can't be countered. Who cares? Can't be countered just is such a small bonus in limited. It'll matter sometimes, but we just can't. There's not enough of a portion of a grade for us to up. So for 6 mana, it can't be countered, instant, and you draw 2 cards, then amass X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. People have this at a B minus. I don't think it's nearly that good at all, because I don't think you're going to create that big of an army. And it's expensive. It's an expensive Mold Drifter, and it's not like it's an option, a Mold Drifter with the options. I mean, I could be wrong. You know, I just feel like you're going to... So what's like 4/4 draw 2? Maybe that's actually, it's averaging a B minus, actually. I'm sorry. I'm looking at this chart. A lot of people have it at a B, but B minus, sure. B minus. I can go for that. I can accept that, knowing that it's an expensive spell. It's an instant, though. To give that as well. Instant. That's really good. I forget that. It feels like a sorcery, but it's an instant. I just think ultimately it doesn't do as much as people think it does. I feel like I've seen some of the amass stuff just kind of get... Anyway. Proliferate, draw a card. People have this averaging a C, C minus. I feel like it's a lot like those ones I talked about, the white spells, which draw a card. It just does practically nothing. Oftentimes it will do nothing. It'll just be cycle, draw a card. But you want that because it's the kind of deck. So C minus. It's just that the other decks that... You know, this may get drafted higher than it should. I just feel like if it was drafted normally, it would only be the red-blue decks, and you know, pulling this one up. And I guess the proliferate's better, and I keep forgetting the planeswalker part of the proliferate. Even then, how many planeswalkers? I don't know. I like a C minus, and you know, it's pretty evenly tied C minus here. Crush Descent. It's a 4-mana counterspell. You know, if your opponent has a god, that's great because, you know, that'll get rid of the god. Yeah, counter target spell unless its controller pays 2, which, once it... Oh, gosh. And amass 2. Feels like a D+. It feels so expensive to just... For what it does. It's just like you're losing tempo on the... I mean, on the spell, because the opponent has to pay 2 more. It's just like, when is this 4-mana spell? But I guess the idea is, well, you always get 2 anyway, so it's not a complete loss. But it's just maybe it's a C minus. I just don't want to be doing this. I mean, maybe sometimes, but Erratic Visionary, people have it as C plus. I think, as absurd as this sounds, people, well, it's, so looters are great, but people ignore activation costs a lot more than they should. And this card has a 1 and a blue activation cost. Now, it may still be a C plus at that level as opposed to a C, but, you know, because it does a lot for, I think there are certain decks that this is just going to be great in. You know, those ones that want spells in the graveyard or whatever. But just pay attention to that activation cost. You know, Eternal Skylord, people have this at a B. It's a 5-mana 3/3, but when it comes into play, you amass 2, and zombie tokens you control have flying. So, if it was the only amass card in your deck, it would be a 3/3 that creates a 2/2 and it has flying while it's still alive. Now, remember, your opponent can kill it and drop your army to the ground suddenly by surprise. And at 3/3, that's a real serious risk. But in general, I think this is a pretty good amass card. This does a decent amount for you. I mean, it's got 5 total power. Total power is not really great, best way to, but you know, B minus is slightly higher than the B. I'm not sure if it's going to be effective enough, you know, and how the amass is going to work, if it's going to be, because, you know, once again, you amass 2 in the army you already have, and your opponent exiles the whole thing, or, you know, bounces the whole thing, you know. But I think, you know, they've done certain things to make that more difficult. But so maybe for that reason, it's a B. The Lost. He's a 1/1 for 1, and when he enters the battlefield, you draw a card. If it was cast from your library, then who cares? You draw 2 cards instead. And when he becomes the target of a spell, you shuffle him into the library. Which, whatever. That's a real, for limited play, that's kind of, it's like drawing him later isn't necessarily the best thing, 1/1 for 1, though, that draws a card when it comes into play. That's like a C+ card. And I think, maybe a C, but 1/1 for 2, feels like a C+. It's just, and everything else is just flavor text. Okay, we've got another Finale of Revelation. Draw X cards. If X is 10 or more, super duper whoopee. So, like, once again, 3 mana, draw a card, not good. 4 mana, draw 2 cards, not good enough. 5 mana, draw 3 cards, you're good enough. 4 mana, 6 mana, draw 4 cards. That's so between those 2 options and then continuing upwards, there's enough right there. So B to B minus, yeah. I've maybe actually B. It's like the certain decks that want it will really want it. Just once again, ignore the 10 thing. Just it'll win the game sometimes, but like drawing 10 cards should also win the game. It just wins the game slightly faster. So it's just still just pure card draw, but B, sure. And once again, there's a range. Maybe this set is maybe this set is always so slow that it gets up into the A range. It's just that great. Maybe I don't think this set is so fast. I suspect that it's slow. And that would make this card better. Significantly better. Flux Capacitor. Some dorks is the A+ here. So whenever you cast a non-creature spell, proliferate. It's a 2/2 for 3. I don't know. B- to C+. I've seen it's a real build around kind of card that you can do a lot with. So I think it can really be a B-. It's got to be the right deck. God Eternal Kefnet, a 4/4 flyer for 4/5 flyer for 4. We're already in deep B territory. It's a god, so you can, if it dies, it comes back in 3 turns. Which, once again, with pretty much all these gods, they're like the best thing you'd want. Whenever you may reveal the first card you draw each turn as you draw it. If you reveal an instant or sorcery card, copy that card. You may cast the copy. Copy costs 2 less to cast. So, once again, I think these cards are great and killer, but I don't feel like they're the A+y cards. It's like it's certainly just basically you'll draw it just over just about everything. You'll pick it over just about everything, so it hardly matters which level of A I choose it at. So the A+ to A- range. Jace, Wielder of Garbage. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. I've heard him called Jace Laboratory Maniac. So for 1 blue, tough casting cost. There's a lot of tough costs in this set. You get a 4. You get 4 loyalty, and for +1, target player puts the top 2 cards of your library in the graveyard. Draw a card. And -8, draw 7 cards. Then if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. I don't really like. I feel like the winning the game is kind of like it's a thing, but it's kind of like a real side thing. Basically, you put 2 cards in your library in your graveyard and draw a card. And one problem is that if you invest a lot in draining your library with Jace and then Jace dies, then you got a problem. And being limited, you may have less ability to control, you know, to control Jace's death. I mean, if they do it in response to the -8, it doesn't matter. But does it? Gosh, yeah. It's weird. I know it's not supposed to, but I'm just thinking about how the rules work. I know it's not supposed to, and so if it doesn't, it does. But the thing is, it's this cost in the corner right here. That's one problem for me in this card. And it's just I just feel like the winning the game part is just really incidental compared to just drawing cards. It's just a card that's just +1 draw card. And it's kind of, you know, weak in terms of planeswalkers. It's like a limited set of abilities because of that. I mean, if you go up 4 times and then go down -8, you'll have stuck 15 cards in your graveyard. You know, there's a good chance you'll win, I guess, at that point. But mostly, but I feel like if you have it in play, if you can cast it, it is really good for, and just drawing a card, it's just really good for that blue deck, that blue-red deck. So I don't want to rate it too high because of those 3 blue symbols, though. You know, so it's a B, or is the averaging is a B-? That's kind of what I feel, even though the B is like the dominant number here. Jace's Triumph. So 3 blue, it's a divination, but if you control a Jace Planeswalker, it's a super divination. Again, these if you control a Planeswalker, it's what did we talk about? It's all mythic Planeswalkers, so whatever. You know, it's C plus. I don't know. Is that a C plus or is it a C? You know, it may be a C plus because like my belief that the set's gonna be real slow and it works well with, you know, what it's a lot of the decks. Cosmina, Enigmatic Mentor. Say 4-mana Planeswalker with 5 loyalty. Spells your opponents cast that target a creature or Planeswalker you control costs 2 more. But it creates a 2/2 blue wizard token. It does it twice. I think it's more of a B- than a B, but I could be wrong, and that activated that static ability just works out better than I think. And if you're proliferating, you know, she can create more, you know, which is kind of the trick with these ones. Cosmina's Transmutation. This card's not a... It is a B-. It's more like a C+. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and has base power toughness 1/1. I don't know. I feel like it's a C+. It doesn't... It's weird because they make it look like it's taking down an army, but you can't take down the Amass. It actually makes Amass creatures bigger if you play them on it. It will take care of a god, though, which is a really big deal. Maybe that's why people are so excited. Maybe that matters a lot. Maybe it's a B- because of that. You know, I don't know. It's not chopped liver. You know, and it's a decent pick. You know, I just don't know that I want to be my exciting first pick, but Kiora's Dam Breaker. That breaker is just not working. When Kiora's Dambreaker enters the battlefield, proliferate to 6-mana 5/6. People have it at a C. It's no. It is a 6-mana card that's a 5/6 that doesn't really generate that much value. You just only have that much room for these things. It's like a C- to a D+. It's just only so much room, and it's not special stat wise. So here is a card, Laser Top Plating, which exists specifically to save amass armies. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn, amass 1. People have it as a C. I think it's probably a C trick. It doesn't win combat, but like your opponent is going to be so sad faced when you try. It's like it's funny because it's like really important like in the amass situation to save the amass army, and it'll save anything else as well, and it'll save you in rare situations. So C, maybe even to a C plus if it really, the range is kind of like C plus to C minus. So Naga Eternal, people have this at a D plus. There's in this article in R&D, they said they spent 1 month discussing whether or not blue should have a vanilla 3-2. Apparently, yes, it should. Like people give it more of a D than anything. It's not. It's filler. It's just you play it because you couldn't find something better to stick in your 3 slot. And that makes it, D plus to C minus. Just depends on what's available. This will take us right through blue. Narset, Parter of Veils. So for 3 mana, you get a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. Each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. In limited. It matters sometimes and not others. Reveal the top 4 cards. Put it in non-creature, non-land. It's expensive to do this. But there's certain decks that will really want this kind of thing, and it'll play well with. And if you're proliferating a lot, you can kind of keep going with it. C to C minus, kind of the range feels like C plus to C minus. Narset's Reversal, huge range on this card, and it's really tough. It's a fork, but it returns the spell to the owner's hand instead of just letting it sit. The problem is the owner gets to cast the spell again. So it kind of works out like it costs them some mana, it slows them down temporarily. It's not really a counter spell completely. I just, and sometimes you just can't, like if a card says, it's just sometimes you can't choose the thing you want. I don't know. I feel like this is a D. I feel like there are situations where you'll bring it into the sideboard. No Escape. 2 and a blue. Counter target creature, Planeswalker, or Ray Liotta. If that spell is countered this way, exile Ray Liotta instead of putting it in its owner's graveyard. Scry 1. Sure. As the average here is C plus. There's a lot more in the C. I feel like it's a C. I mean, again, this will take care of your gods, but those aren't going to be those are just going to be just you got punched problems, rather than normal problems. It's just you get to scry 1. C. Relentless Advance. So this card, it's got a spread from C plus to F. Okay, so 3 and a blue for amass 3 and flavor text. This is terrible. This card's terrible. It's a terrible card. It will win the game or something sometimes when you already have an amass army. It's an amass card with no other effect, no way to mitigate the problem of when your amass army is wiped out. If you play it, if it's the only amass card in your deck, it's purely a hill giant, but it's a token hill giant, which is a token's always worse. So it's a terrible rate for that token, right? You want to pay 3 for a 3/3. Once again, with a mass, because you don't really have the option, you just get you can't create a new army if you already have one. You know, you it, it, it's just like you have anti options with a mass. I just think I think this card you should never ever play, right? So even though in some logical sense it's not an F, in a rational sense, you just should never ever play this card. You should never draft this card. Um, if you needed this to fill out your 4 slot, I mean, do you not have anything else in the 3 slot or 5 slot you could use instead? Like a Rescuer Sphinx. For 2 and 2 blue, you get a 3/2 flyer, which is a little underwhelming, but it's that would already be like okay, just not great. But when it enters the battlefield, you can return a non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand, which may be a benefit if it's one of these planeswalkers and it's out of counters. If you do, Rescuer Sphinx enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter. Cards that and then it's a 4/3 instead of a 3/2. I think like people out there this is a B-. I think that's about right because I think it does all the things you want to do if you can do it, but also allows you the option of not being able to do it, right? So it's like so many of the cards that require you to return a creature or you can't play them, they're very limited. But this one, you can just bring it down as a 3/2 and be a little underwhelmed, but not tremendously underwhelmed, okay? Or you can pull it in, bring it down as a 4/3, and bring something up that you don't want to bring up and it costs you a little tempo. Or you can pull something up that you do want to bring up and it's an advantage, and then you can start using that Planeswalker ability again. I think that's great. So I think a B- is a great grade on this card. Silent Submersible. It's a real submarine Nautilus crap going on here, which is a complete flavor fail because it has no evasion or any hiding or whatever. It's like, I'm sure it did at some point and then it was too good. Like, there are 3 vehicles in this set and they all feel like they've been kind of tapped down. The 2 we've seen so far are the worst ones. This one's the worst. I mean, the white one is just super expensive. This one, it's a 2/3 for 2. When it damages a player or a planeswalker, draw a card. That would be fine, but it already has Crew 2 on it. So, and for 2 blue, it's just an expensive card for what it does. C-, D+. I don't know. I don't want, like with no evasion, and already having to have a creature and Crew 2. Not if it was 1, it would be so totally different because you could use things like this Strix right here without being pumped up, or just whatever. I don't have anything else on the page. Just a lot of little tiny creatures. So I don't know. C-, D+ range, maybe C if it turns out it works real well with the decks. Sky Theater Strix. Why is it theater? Is it the theater of war? The Pacific Theater. 1/2 flyer for 2, but when you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +1/+0. C+, because this is so much what the spell decks want, and there's so much in this set for these decks that want to keep casting spells. I mean, a 2/2 flyer for 2 is just great, and a 3/2 flyer for 2. I mean, so it's just what you can get out of him. Spark Double. I don't like. It's a clone, except it clones planeswalkers, and the planeswalker, ignore the planeswalker legendary stuff, and it gets a +1/+1 counter or loyalty counter if it clones it. I don't know. I think this is like a C+, not a B-. I don't like. Sorry, it's a copy of a creature or planeswalker you control. So you're just not guaranteed to get the biggest, best thing on the battlefield. And that just makes it so much worse than a regular clone, which is already, so it's just so much worse when it's only your stuff, because you have to be winning to have the, it, there's a lot of win more. There's a lot of win more. Spellkeeper Weird. So this particular weird, which has another weird in its picture, Spellkeeper Weird, it's a 3 mana 1/4, which is not great. So, and then for 2 and tap and sack it, you can return any sort of sorcery card. It's, people have it a lot of C pluses. It's averaging at a C. I think I kind of like it at C more, just because it's pricey for what it does. I mean, it holds down the battlefield. I just don't think it's, because it's a little clunky, I just don't think it's that C plusy. But it's very playable, very doable. Stealth Mission. I don't like this card. I just don't. I would rather it not. Put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature you control. That creature can't be blocked this turn. I mean, it's invisibility with 2+1/+1 counters. That feels like a D+ to D to me. It's averaging C-. You'll lose to this card sometimes, but also it's a good way to get 2 for 1. Tamiyo's Epiphany. Is it Epiphany Proudfoot? Movie reference. Scry 4, then draw 2 cards. People have this at a C+. I think it's a great card drawing card for a sorcery for 4. If the set is really slow, then its range actually kind of goes up to a B-. Scry 4 is a lot to scry. I mean, you basically get to look at 4 cards and choose any 2. And if all those cards aren't good enough, or if 3 of them aren't good enough, you can even dig 1 or 2 deeper, and draw just anything, Scry 4, and you can rearrange the top of your deck, and it's like you scry 4, you like 3 out of the 4 cards, you take 2 of them, you stick the 3rd one on top, and it's a real good, I don't know. See, I almost think it's a B-. I just think, I feel like this set's going to be slow, but like that's the range, right? It's like the range, So, we don't want to just say we know the answers to everything. Even if I know who I am. Teferi's Time Twist. I don't know why they used a name so much like Time Twister when it's nothing like Time Twister. Let's do the time twist again. So you want to exile the permanent you control and bring it at the beginning of the back at the beginning of the next instep. Okay. If it enters the battlefield as a creature, it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter. I don't know why they didn't bother to do the same thing for loyalty counters. I think this is like D+. It's not the kind of card saving I want. I'd much rather be giving something hexproof than this weird bounce I need +1/+1 counter. And maybe getting that +1/+1 counter is good enough. I don't know. So Thunderdrake. Thunderdrake is a 4 mana 2/3 and flying. So that's already kind of, getting up to the CC plus range. It's kind of like on the borderline. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Thunderdrake. So a 3/4 flyer is well worth 4 mana, right? And it's not hard to get there. Especially if you've got a lot of cheap spells in your spell deck, you can cast it the turn you can cast the Thunderdrake sometimes. So, and you can keep going, 4, 5, whatever, like the first counter is good. First counter is pretty good. The second counter is really great. So B minus. I really think this card is just what the spell deck wants. I think it's premium common in terms of creatures. I could be overrating it. It could be just too hard to get that second spell, but in this set, and a lot of it depends on in this set. So we've got Totally Lost. Flip is stuck on top of the statue, and put target non-land permanent on top of its owner's library, unless it's a mass, in which case you blow the thing away. It's an instant. Because of the amass thing, I think this is better than it is. I think it's going to be worth spending 5 to get rid of an amass army. So C to C plus range. Wall of Runes. You know, I really don't like walls. 1 mana defender. When Wall of Runes enters the battlefield, scry 1. It's not the same as drawing a card. But I still think it's probably a D plus, because there are probably flyer decks where it's just like, I just need a wall. You know, I just need, and even then, there will be times where you just need to slow down your opponent because your opponent's being aggro, and you just need, like, and 4 is enough that they'll have to expend something to get through it. Within the first couple turns. All right. So we are in black. We are back in black. Aid the Fallen. Aid the Fallen. Make it a better place. I don't know. 1 in a black, sorcery. Choose 1 or both. Return a creature. From graveyard, return a planeswalker. See, it's cheap. If you can get 2, it's cheap. It's a good cheap price. I just don't know how often you'll get 2. So planeswalkers. When you're in sealed deck, you're going to open, ignoring any foils. You'll open a little more than 6 planeswalkers, because you have to consider the promo cards will often be a planeswalker, maybe always be a planeswalker. I wouldn't be surprised if they're all planeswalkers in the promo. So let's just imagine you have 7 planeswalkers, per, and you'll be able to play 4 to 5 of them, because you'll play, like, if you play 3 colors. So you're going to have, that many. In draft, some people will draw, you will have an average of 3 planeswalkers, 1 planeswalker per pack. And not all of them will be playable. And even if you take them, you might not get all of them. So, but some people will draw more planeswalkers than others. So, I guess the question is, how many planeswalkers do you actually get in draft? Which is generally what we consider the grades for, because we're looking at when you should choose stuff. I feel like because of that, this card, because you might not have enough planeswalkers, this card might be a C minus, but it will vary a lot based on your needs. If you have 5 planeswalkers, that you might, the more planeswalkers you have, the more it's cutting into your creature count sometimes, or it's better if it's cutting into your instant count. So I don't know. It's got a range from C plus to C minus. We'll just say. Banehound, 1/1 lifelink haste. I don't ever want to play this card. So people will play it, and it just seems terrible in this set. D minus. Bleeding Edge. Bleeding on the edge, you can't help yourself from bleeding. So it's 3 mana, 2 black, to give a creature -2/-2 and do a mass 2. It's a sorcery, though. I think it's a little clunkier than people think. I guess I feel like it's got a It's got like a range between, I mean, -2/-2 is so much less likely to kill something than -3, -3, -4, -4. Um, and if you don't, I'm just not sure whether to give it a B minus C plus. Just how clunky it is. I feel like, there's a range, B minus C plus, maybe a little bit outside of that to a B or a C. It just depends on how clunky it really feels. Bolas's Citadel. I don't like the legend frame. I think it looks like an alien on Star Trek, where you just stuck a bunch of wrinkles on it. It doesn't really have any rhyme or reason. Anyway, Bolas's Citadel is a 6-mana, 3 black for a legendary artifact. This whole cycle of legendary artifacts you've been noticing, which includes the vehicles. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play the top card of your library. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than pay its mana cost. Sacrifice 10 non-land permanents. Each opponent loses 10 lives. 10 lives. Add 10 quarters. You notice the range on this is completely absurd because nobody really knows how this plays. That's probably correct. I don't think it is. I don't think the range goes up to A minus or an A, but I don't know. I am so unsure on this one. It feels like you play this card late in the game, you have to start paying life. There's a good chance it does nothing. Like if you're behind, it might be too late. You might just lose by playing this card. You really need to play this card when you're at parity, in order to not die, in order to get, 10 life of permanence out of it. And then you can win the game. And you can't really build your deck around it. I don't know. I feel like this thing is probably more like a D+, but the range is huge on this one. I really don't like most of this bond cycle. I feel like, they're all weird. So for 5 mana, you can return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, but it gets haste. 5 mana is a lot, even with haste for a... return a creature from your graveyard, not any graveyard, your graveyard. I don't know. You have, these cards are always tougher than they seem. C minus, range, C, D plus. I like this range thing. I should be using this range more often. Charity Extractor. Kind of an interesting range on this guy in that it's mostly 4 square bars. 4 mana for a 1/5, but it's got lifelink, but it barely matters that it have lifelink because you'd have to... I don't know if it's what black wants, is this guy blocking, but I don't really feel like he's worse than a C minus. You may say maybe he's a D plus, but he's serving a specific function, but he can attack, he can pick up some some counters, but black's not really the color that picks up counters on anything but a mass. Speaking of range, we've got Command the Dreadhorde. 6 mana for choose any number of target creatures and planeswalkers in graveyards. You take damage equal to the total converted mana cost of those cards, put them into the battlefield under your control. I feel similarly to the Citadel, although I think it'll be easier to use this one a little bit, but I feel like it's going to be like a worse Bond of Revival sometimes. In order for this to really work, you need to have... So it's like it's any graveyard, right? But you need to have a bunch of small things sitting around. I just don't know if that's going to be the case. I just don't... Like C minus, I just don't... it'll work sometimes, and when it works sometimes it'll work well. I just think it's gonna be so much tougher to get working. But I give it that it could just be easier than I expect. I just you know that's the thing. I just speculating on cards. None of these is like the right answer. Here's another Planeswalker, a Davriel, Rogue Shadow Mage. He's covering up his own name, which is I don't know if that's how much exactly by design that is. For 3 mana, 3 loyalty. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, Davriel or Rogue Shadow Mage deals 2 damage to them. That's not really great. -1, target player discards a card. You can get 3 cards out of it over 3 turns. I feel like this card is a C or worse. I just think it's extremely slow for what it does. It's not tough for your opponent to knock off, and it's kind of tough to get a lot of damage in with it. Another way to discard cards is just to spend 4 mana straight up with Davriel's Shadow Fugue, and make the player discard 2 cards and lose 2 life. I don't want to pay more for my Mind Rots, D+, but it'll have uses in some games where it'll matter sometimes. You'll okay bringing in the slow Mind Rot. Deliver unto Evil. Yeah. Oops, it's off the screen. I'm just kidding. Choose up to 4 target cards in your graveyard. Okay. If you control a Bloodless Planeswalker, you should already have won the game. Otherwise, an opponent chooses 2 of them. Leave the chosen cards in your graveyard and put the rest into your hand. Exile, Deliver unto Evil. This card's terrible. F. You pick 4 cards from your graveyard, okay? You have to have 4 cards good enough that you'd want to bring back already in your graveyard. And you get, of the 4 best cards in your graveyard, you get the 3rd and 4th best ones. This isn't even like a split. This is like the worst case scenario. It's like, it's just like Gifts Ungiven. Well, no. Gifts Ungiven is kind of a combo card, and part of that is getting cards into your graveyard that weren't there in the first place. The trick with Gifts Ungiven is it's like you get 4 from anywhere in your deck, and 2 of them are great, and plus you're throwing stuff in your graveyard, and so they're screwed no matter what they do. There's no screwed no matter what they do with this card, okay? This just gives you the 3rd and 4th best card in your graveyard back into your hand. Unless you control a Bolas Planeswalker, unless you get 4 cards from your graveyard. But you're not going to control a Bolas Planeswalker. Even if you had Nicol Bolas in your deck, I don't think you play this. So Dreadhorde Invasion is an interesting card. At the beginning of your life, you lose 1 life and amass 1. But this isn't like getting fairies every turn. You're making one thing bigger. So, and when it gains power 6 or greater, it gains lifelink. And that's kind of important, because if you hit that, you can kind of keep the chain going. But I'm going to say B-, even though the category is B, and it could be even worse, because I think this card is more of a liability than you imagine. Because you have to be killing people with this thing, or you will lose the game to it. You'll lose the game to your own card. And like watching the Loading Ready Run stream, once again, it's a better player playing this card, and they lost. I think it was an R&D guy, if I remember correct. I don't remember who it was exactly. They lost to the card playing this card twice. They lost to their own card twice, even after gaining mana life off the lifelink from it. So yeah, B-, but maybe it's worse. I think this card is just much worse than it seems. Okay, Dread Malkin. It's a 1/1 menace for 1. Okay, that's already like in garbage territory. But sacrifice another creature, a planeswalker. Put 2+1 on Dread Malkin. I don't know. It's like a C minus. It's like it's a lot of material and mana to spend to start getting just because it's just so nothing. It's like a D plus. It's so nothing. It could be better, but it's just so nothing before you start spending 3 mana and sacrificing another creature or planeswalker. I mean, yeah, it's better if you can sacrifice planeswalker. Duskmantle Operative. It's a 2/2 for 2. It can't be blocked by creatures power 4 or greater, but it can be blocked by 3. The people have it as a C or C minus. I think this is more just a test of what you think a 2/2 is. I don't think that ability is enough to push it from C minus to C, but whatever. I mean, it's I mean, honestly, it's probably a C just because you end up playing so many of the 2/2s just to fill out your deck sometimes. Not always. I mean, there are better 2/2s, you see down below. Elder Spell. Black, destroy any number of planeswalkers. Choose a planeswalker you control. Put 2 loyalty counters on it for each planeswalker destroyed this way. So it's an interesting card. In sealed deck, I like this. I wonder if I said limited instead of sealed deck earlier. I had that on my brain. In sealed deck, I like this an awful lot because your opponent will always have a bunch of planeswalkers. I think in draft it gets worse. And I don't know if it's good enough to draft it to C plus, but it's it's crushing when it works. It's just crushing when it works. But that's but when they don't have enough planeswalkers, it's not good enough. So that's kind of like why the range. It just might be. I don't know. It might be the kind of card that you just sideboard out an awful lot, but leave in but start in because the upside is so high. And if that's the case, it's it's a CC plus kind of card. If you were drafting cards to play in sealed deck, though, it's like straight up B because they're going to have planeswalkers. It's gonna be one of the. Heck, it may just be an A in seal, just because people are gonna work too hard to get all the planeswalkers into their deck in sealed. That's the pre-release A, that is. Eternal Taskmaster. People kind of have it in a range from a B plus to a C plus. B minus the common number. I like this card a lot, but people seem to like it a lot too. B minus. You're not going to get too many returns, but you only really need he's good enough as a 2/3 for 2 that comes into play tapped. That's 2/3 for 2 is just it gets you a step ahead of the game, and just in one turn, it just costs you. But that ability, just all you need to do is just use it once, and you've gained an awful lot. Finale of Eternity. What is it? An A minus. His range is destroy up to 3 target creatures with toughness X or less. So, in order to understand where this power of the card is, take a look at the average battlefield. So let's say you had 6 mana to spend. Or let's say you had 5 mana to spend, for example. Okay? Are there going to be 3 creatures with 3 toughness or less? And if you have 6 mana to spend, are there going to be 4 creatures? And so the nature of the battlefield in these games is just going to make a difference. I think it's A minus, to A. It just depends on what the texture of those battlefields look like. It's just the range of this card. Also, if you spend 10, so you've destroyed 3 creatures and you've just kind of spent 10, you return all creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Yes, you win. So strangely enough, in this case, it actually might matter because This most of the other ones, the X is kind of like one extra card per X or one extra thing per X. This one runs out of steam for increasing the X. So the 10 like might just be like a might be the fireball mode on this one. So, as much as I've made fun of the 10 not mattering before, I think it kind of does here. It's just it won't matter very often, but occasionally you'll just also happen to completely win the game. Because 3 creatures might not even win you the game. God Eternal Bontu. Menace is a great ability, by the way. So this one, like A minus, I think it's A minus to A actually, I think is more appropriate because you can sacrifice any number of permanents and draw that many cards. So you can, unlike some of the other ones, and the green one you can too, but it's not quite the same. But you get value as soon as this guy comes into play. Okay, yes, you are trading 1 for 1, but generally you're getting rid of things you just don't want anymore, or extra lands or whatever late in the game. So but and other than that, he's a 5 mana for a 5/6 menace, which is a really tough card to stop. It's although not as I think he'll run into guys sometimes and just die, or just run into walls, and it's hard to block. It's hard to double block a 5/6 and not lose anything. But given all that he's got, yeah, he's not. It's funny because he's probably not the most lethal. I mean, the flying on whichever one the blue flyer is probably more lethal immediately, but he's probably more just more guaranteed value. Hail to the Red Horde. People have this pretty consistently at a C+. It's a 3/2 for 4 that when it dies, amass 2. From what I've seen from how it plays pretty well. Though, I think, it's a real pain in the butt to kill something and then to have something else automatically, so you can lose a lot of tempo running into this guy. He's not a great deal as a 3/2 for 4, but what he can do to keep you up on tempo or to change the tempo seems pretty good. Kaya's Ghost Form. Enchant creature or planeswalker you control. When enchanted permanent dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. I really don't like these cards. I almost want to just say an F in that I never play them, but like a D or something, a D plus, and they all have their uses. I hate them so much. I just don't ever want to play them. Let's get a Lazotop Behemoth. I always have in my head saying Behemoth instead of Behemoth, just because I learned the word from reading it. So he's a 5/4 zombie hippo for 5. People have him at a D+. He's a C-. I mean, the C- is a more popular number. He's just a blob of stats for 5 that you'll fill into that hole, but he's not particularly special, but he's not particularly bad. He's just a fire elemental. Lazotop Reaver. I think this card is more of it's a 1/2 for 2 that amasses 1. From what I've seen of the play, I do kind of feel like this card is more of a C than a C+. I don't really think he does enough special. I think I think he kind of leaves a lot of. He's kind of like. He's just not that much different than the thing that creates two goblin tokens, except sometimes he's worse, sometimes he's better. Liliana is the card that people is second best card, I guess. I don't know. It's I don't think it's good. I don't think it's quite as good as people think, because it costs 6 mana, and for 6 mana, for +1 you could create a 2/2 zombie black zombie creature token. Yep. You're going to win the game eventually if you keep this into play. You will win the game eventually. That's like easy A- territory for that. -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures. It's a lot to spend to everybody sacrifices 2, and they, won't necessarily, if you're behind, it won't necessarily keep you from being behind. It could put you further behind. Just depends. And then 9, each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. I think that plays completely against the +1. It just seems to play completely against the +1. The static ability is when a creature you control dies, draw a card. And that's really important here too. So it's a really good card. It's just, and we're getting into picking nits. I think it's kind of slow. Unless, there are certain times when the sacrifice creatures will make it really fast and big hit, but sometimes that will also not work. Liliana's Triumph. Triumph was a Roman. The Roman generals would get it was a special parade they got, where they would allowed to march into town, and they would show off everything that they got, and then they'd like execute their prisoners or turn them into slaves or something at the end. Liliana's Triumph is basically just a 1 and a black instant. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a Liliana Planeswalker card, then really, who cares? People have it at a C+. This is so much worse than the Gideon's attacker block because there's no filter on it. There's no way to filter this down to better creatures. So I don't know. I feel like this card is a C-. Now here's a card I think that's really interesting. It's a really big range and could be just one of the best things in the set. Massacre Girl. She's 5 mana for a 4/4 menace, which would be a fine but forgettable card. But when Massacre Girl enters the battlefield, each other creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Okay, that's really minor. But then, whenever a creature dies this turn, each creature other than Massacre Girl gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So the trick is, you bring her down, and if you can kill one creature, if there's a 1/1/1, then you can get another 1/1. And eventually, or if there are enough 1/1s, or if there are enough small creatures, eventually you'll just kill everything and have only Massacre Girl left. And you won't always want to do that, but you can build your deck around making this work as well. I think that this is just great. I think that this is just an A. I just think you can just... And once Massacre Girl has done her job, she has Menace. This means it's going to be tough for them to stop you from just pounding in. What I don't think is great is... As I kept calling Ob Nixilis. I just realized it. I kept calling Nicol Bolas Ob Nixilis. Dang it. I'm not going to go back and edit a stream. At least I think I did. Nicol Bolas Ob Nixilis. Oh gosh, too many fake names. Okay, Ob Nixilis the Hate Twisted is a 5 mana planeswalker for 5. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Ob Nixilis deals 1 damage to that player. Okay, that's nice. It's 1 damage a turn, maybe a little more. You'd rather them not be drawing the cards, but... -2, destroy target creature. Okay, great. We got a great... Oh, wait. Its controller draws 2 cards. So let's say you play Ob Nixilis and you blow up one of their cards. Okay? Essentially, what you have is a 1 for 3. That's terrible. So let's say you blow up a second one of their cards. Okay? How exactly you net it? Essentially, they're +2 cards the first time you destroy a creature, and then +1 card the second time you destroy a creature. So if you use it up to the max you can without any extra tokens, your opponent is +3 cards. Yes, they took 4 damage in this process or whatever, but that's a ton of cards. I don't like this at all. I just, I really don't like this card. I want to F it. I don't want to ever want to play this. I could be wrong, and maybe this strategy works out brilliantly and it's perfect and everything, that I just don't like this card. I do like Ob Nixilis's Cruelty. People give it a B plus. I think, it's B plus B. It's still, it's an instant that gives a creature -5/-5, and it exiles the creature. Still doesn't kill gods, because they'll come back. B plus, B plus, whatever. This is it's maybe the best common. Price of Betrayal, $1.05. Price of Betrayal, large range. Remove up to 5 counters from target artifact, creature, planeswalker, or opponent. I think I don't ever want to play this card. Just that simple. I don't think I ever want to play this card. Yeah, it might kill a mass sometimes. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough to make it a D plus. You can kill a planeswalker sometimes. I just think it's so narrow in design. It's just like there's so many less narrow ways to accomplish these things. Interestingly enough, you can't remove counters from yourself. It will take energy away. Shriek Diver. Now I'm Shriek Diver. So it's a 3 mana, 2/1 flyer, but you can spend 1 additional mana and give it haste, which is better because it's slightly option, but it's so much worse than the other flyers. It's like a C-. It's so easily killed with the cards in this set. Just, it dies to everything. Sorin's Thirst. I Seek Water. It's 2 mana for 2 damage and you gain 2 life. That's nice. It does cost 2 black mana though. For that reason, I feel like it's more of a C than a C plus. It's just so much tougher to cast for something that doesn't do very much. I don't know. Spark Harvest. Finally, this year's Spark crops come in. As an additional cost to play this spell. So here's another option for the best common. And people are writing this down. I think this is really great. As an additional cost to play this spell, sacrifice creature or pay 3 black. So it either costs 1 black and you sack a creature, or you pay, it costs 5 mana. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Now, see, I think if it just said destroy target creature or planeswalker, it would be B-. I think people are being distracted by the sacrifice creature, which is a positive option because it allows you to play it cheaply when you really need to and you can afford it, or to pay full price when you really need to. It's like Force of Will. You rarely spend on Force of Will, but you're happy to have it. But this is like an option you would need more. I think this card is really good in that regard. I think like all those sacrifice, it destroys a creature or a planeswalker. I think all those cards that only destroyed a creature that your whatever you had to sack a creature. Having to sack a creature is just, you'd want to do it sometimes, but you just don't want to do it other times. And just having the option on which way you want to go, so such that when you have, it gives you, so the cards that forced you to sack a creature, when you reach the late game, you were often kind of like, oh man, I really have to throw a creature away to make this work. Right. But, and a card that costs 5, it's like, oh man, it's like, I can't handle this in the early game. So there's just so much you can do with Spark Harvest. I just think this card is great, so range B, B plus. People are underestimating how much that option actually means. It's just so cheap when you have to pay the other way. We're almost done with black. Spark Reaper. I don't. If people have this at a C plus, it's more like a C minus. Like options are great, but this one, the sack a creature to gain 1 life and draw a card. We've seen similar stuff, and they weren't great in the past. You can say, well, you're not paying that much more for this guy, I suppose. Maybe it's just a C. He's no C plus though. Tithe Bearer Giant. When he enters the battlefield, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. It's kind of an interesting one. It's a very expensive, card to draw a card and lose a life on. But C, yeah, it's kind of like he just fills the 6th slot okay, but not spectacularly in any way. Because you generally want to just win with the 6 mana, but you can't always do that with your deck. And, it just gives you another shot at another card. Toll of the Invasion. Kind of a lower ranging card. 2 and a black. Opponent reveals their hand. Choose a non-land card from it. Player discards a card and mass 1. This is like a sideboard card. You just, like, the amass 1 is not draw a card. And it's like, this is a 3 mana Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize has become, I don't know. Maybe you play it as C minus, D plus level. You just need some filler or whatever. It's got to be a slow game to make this card work. Mass 1 is just not that much. Unlikely Aid. Rakdos has aids. Everybody has aids. That's the reference to the Team America World Police. And in another set, no. The South Park Jared has AIDS episode is not so much funny anymore. Even if AIDS is now funny according to that episode. Unlikely Aid. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains indestructible on the turn. Indestructible, sometimes better, sometimes worse than hexproof. But you'll win a lot of combat with this card. C to C minus trick, sure. Rockin' Art though. Vampire Opportunist. 2/1 for 2 for 7 mana. You can start draining slowly. It's like a D plus. This card is too fragile. It just dies to everything. It's gonna be dead. So, it's like this is one of those cards where the gap between the early game and the late game spend is so huge. You need a little, like that, reaching that mana dump part is just so far away that you need more out of the card. And this card ought to be a 2/2 for what it is, at least in my opinion. That's how I feel about it. People play it more, obviously, but Vizier of the Scorpion. He's a real Jafar. Oh gosh, this is an interesting one. When it enters the battlefield, amass 1, and zombie tokens you control have Death Touch. So he doesn't give Death Touch to all your regular zombies, because you're going to have some more sometimes, which he doesn't, give himself Death Touch, obviously. So he kind of creates a 1/1 Death Touch token. You can get killed suddenly and lose the Death Touch. I don't know. People have him at a C plus. It's hard to say. This one's puzzling me. I feel like he has a range between, he's got this range of C plus, even B minus to C, but probably not B minus. I don't think he does as much as some of the other. We'll see when we get to the multicolor, especially some of the other amass modifiers. So it's kind of like that. Vraska's Finisher. When Vraska's Finisher enters the battlefield, destroy target creature or planeswalker opponent controls that was dealt damage this turn. It's hard to say if it's a C or C plus. People are very hesitant on this because they've been burned in the past. And I think that's about right. So C, just because it's just not good enough on its own, but you don't if you get how often do you need to get a creature on this card? If you get one out of every 3 times, that's really good. you know. So On-Crop Invader. It's kind of an interesting thing. It's a Raging Bull, 2 and a red for a 2/2. As long as it's your turn, On-Crop Invader has first strike. That's not good enough by far, but one, sacrifice another creature. On-Crop Invader gets the threat of activation, +2/+0 until end of turn. People have it at a C, and I think there's enough going on with the threat and everything to make it a C. Blind Blast. Gonna blast your blind out. Does that make sense? Blind Blast deals 1 damage to target creature. That creature can't block this turn. Draw a card. People have it kind of like a C- to a D+. It's really like, for that spells deck, it works, and nowhere else does it really do much. People might play it more because of the cantrip effect, and for that reason it'll kill off. I mean, all of these little 1 creature things are in danger. I don't know. C- to D+ range, yeah. Bolt Bend. So this is 4 mana for change the target of target spell or ability with a single target, which is terrible. But it also says this spell costs 3 less to cast if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. Still think it's terrible. People have it a lot in a D. Sideboard, or for certain decks, it'll come in. Now, I know from somewhere else this was created specifically to protect the amassed creatures. So, and that makes sense because if they get, you only really want to save them if they get larger than 4. Bond of Passion, there's a big range in this one. I think it's a terrible, terrible card. 6 mana to gain control of target creature until end of turn and untap that creature. It gains haste, blah, blah. Standard threat and effect. Bond of Passion deals 2 damage to any other target. So this card was already having trouble getting played at 4 mana. So we add on the 2 damage to any target, which is, a big thing, but then we tack 2 whole mana on it. I don't know. I don't think I ever want... D is a big number in this one. I don't think I ever want to play this card. Maybe in certain slow matchups. I do want to play Burning Prophet, though. I think people are underestimating this card because it's averaging a C. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Burning Prophet gets +1/+0 until end turn. It's 2 mana, 1/3. Okay, sure. But it also has Then Scry 1. That's just really great for this spells deck. It is like, so C+ to B- range. This is so totally what that deck wants. Chainweb Cyclops, 5 mana, 4/4 for 4 mana. Creature can't block. It's a thing you can choose to put in at your 5 slot, which is not the worst or best. So C, I guess, and maybe lower, C- Chandra Fire Artisan. People are a little bit hesitant on this, and is for 4 mana. You can exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. That's fine. It's not as good as the Jace, but and whenever 1 or more loyalty counters are removed from Chandra, she deals that much damage to target opponent Planeswalker. Except she only can remove you can only manually remove the counters if you get up to 7. -7, exile the top 7 cards of your library. You play them this turn. That seems like a terrible -7. And the whole point of it is just to do 7 damage to someone, though. So that's why it works. I just don't know how good this is. I mean, it'll grind away your opponent pretty well, but and your opponent's going to have trouble getting rid of it because it's going to cost them to get rid of it. But B. Chandra's Pyrohelix, though, it's stuck up at a C+, probably a C+ to a B-. I just think there are a lot of 1s in this set. 1 toughness is people, at least the way people are rating cards. So for 2 mana, 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. Great. Great. Not super premium removal, but nice to have. Does a lot of stuff, a lot of options. Don't just blow it on the first one toughness creature you see. Chandra's Triumph. Chandra's Triumph deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. If it's St. Patrick's Day, Chandra's Triumph deals 5 damage to that permanent instead. Yeah, B. Yeah, sure. It's not quite a lightning bolt, but it hits creatures and planeswalkers. It's great removal. It's not the best removal, but it's great. It's great. Gets you real high. Cyclops Electromancer, when it enters the battlefield, it's a 5 mana 4/2, which is a crappy set of stats. But when it enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to target creature and opponent controls, where X is the number of instant and or sorcery cards, instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. So it's for that spells deck again we've been talking about, and you want to have a bunch of stuff in your graveyard, and you probably need 2 to make it okay and 3 to make it decent. It's just going to be a range B plus, B minus, C plus, but if your deck is not designed for it, it's complete garbage. Demolish is a card we see an awful lot, and it's not something you want to play. Devouring Helen is another Hellion. Devouring Helen Mirren. It's a 3 mana 2/2. As Devouring Helen Mirren enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice any number of creatures and/or planeswalkers. If you do, it enters with twice that many +1/+1 counters on it. So you only need 1 to make it a 4/4, and you can make it really big. But it's like if you can't sacrifice anything, it's terrible. But they're kind of like, there's a little bit of a sacrifice deck design theme. I think it's probably a C+. I think it probably plays well enough into that. Look at that art. It's like it's using blurring effects. It's like things are barely. It's like things are so computerized now. Not that I'm not opposed to it. It's just, I think the advance of technology is great. It's just kind of, it's so far away from what you could do by hand. Dreadhorde Arcanist is one I've been banging my head around on. It's a 1/3 trample. Yeah, 1/3 trample for 2. The joke being that you want to increase its power and toughness, because whenever it attacks, you may cast instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost equal to or less than its power from your graveyard without paying its mana cost, and then exile it. Yeah, so the question is this like a C or C plus or what? And I'm not sure. Like C plus to C minus range, and it just depends on how easy it is and how many cheap things you can get, because you really need lots of ones, and you need lots of ways to pump this power. People are giving Dreadhorde Twins, they give it a C plus. I think this card is actually a C. I think it is far less. It gives zombie tokens trample, but I think it's just less than people think it is. I think it just does less than people think. It's a 2/2 for 4, but the mass 2. And it gives the zombie tokens trample. And that is a big deal to give that zombie trample. But I just feel like it's less than actually getting 2 tokens most of the time. Finale of Promise. X red. You may cast 1 instant or sorcery card from your graveyard with converted mana cost X without 1 instant and sorcery. Up to 1 instant and sorcery card without paying its mana cost, converted mana cost X or less, right? So an instant, a sorcery, cost X or less, cast both of them, or one of each. One of each, or one of one of the other. I screwed that up. And exile them, just we always do that. If X is 10 or more, copy each of those spells twice, which it's once again, it's not, this card is not nearly as winny as some of the other cards. I feel like you'll need a lot of cheap cards in order to make this work, and you'll want to have like 3-cost cards that you can, a 3-cost instant, 3-cost sorcery. Your deck needs to be set up right. For all those reasons, it feels more like a D+, just because you need all this stuff to go right. People give this Goblin Assailant a D+ for having nothing, and it's definitely not a D or a D-, guys. You're gonna you're gonna use this filler in your deck. I think it's a C-. That's kind of my level on it. So people are confused. Goblin Insult Team. When it's a ball lightning-ish thing. It's a 4-mana 4/1 haste. When it dies, put a +1/+1 counter target creature you control. I think C- is appropriate. It's fragile. It'll go in some decks and work, but it'll often you'll be staring down this stupid 1/1 token, and you'll have to slam it in there and get a 1/1 counter. And Grim Initiate, people have this at a C-. It's a 1/1 first strike, which is nice. The first strike part for 1. And when it dies, amass 1 C- to D+. I don't know that I really want to play Grim Initiates at all. Heartfire, people have it a C. And it's kind of a crappy spell. It's an instant for 2 mana that does 4 damage to any target. And the any target part's important. Because if it was just a creature, it'd be like... But as an initial cost, you need to sacrifice a creature or planeswalker. Unlike that black spell, there's no optionality here. You just must. Optionalism. Optionosity. You just have to sack a creature. And people have this at a C. I almost want a C-. It's probably about right. It's just not. You cannot afford to have many of these in your deck. But if you need removal and you missed out on the good removal, then here it is. Honor the God Pharaoh. Honor, the God Pharaoh. Legendary creature. No, it's Honor the God Pharaoh. 2 in a red. Additional cost, discard a card. Draw 2 cards. Amass 1. C-. Yeah, it's C-. Let's talk about Ilharg, the Raze-Boar. So this is a 5 mana for a 6/6 trample. That's already well in the B range, and it's a god. So we're placing that up in probably in the low A range, or bottom B+, whatever. And whenever it attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand to the battlefield tapped and attacking. But he doesn't have haste, so it's not quite this. The creature comes in tapped and attacking, but Ilharg doesn't have haste, so it's not as much of a surprise as it could be. And you return that creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. It's not like that 3 and a green one that did it back in Amonkhet was anything special. I still feel like he's like an A-. He's great. He's huge. He'll beat up you. But sometimes he'll get blocked and die, and sometimes he'll just die and come back every 3 turns, but you'll lose because it'll just be too slow. It's a great card. It's just once again my not A+ing of it may just be my own personal thing. Invading Manticore at a C, 6 mana for a 4/5 to mass 2. Okay, sure, C, whatever. Now, Jaya, Venerated Fire Mage. She's got a 6/6/6 rating right now. 5 mana, 5 loyalty walker. -2. She deals 2 damage to any target. And also her static ability is if another red source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals that damage +1. I don't know, I think it's pretty decent. People have it at B-. It's probably about right. I like it. Jaya's Greeting. So this card's great. People that have it at a B. It's just simply it deals 3 damage to target creature. The Chandra one also deals damage to Planeswalker, but this one also scries 1. It's a great card. B, whatever. You'll just, great. Pick it up. I don't know when faced with the Chandra one or this one what you're going to exactly choose. I feel like it depends on the deck you're playing to some extent. I think this one plays better in the red-blue deck. Krenko Tin Street Kingpin of Crime. So he's a 1/2 for 3. That's crappy. Whenever he attacks, put a +1/+1 creature, then create that many 1/1 red goblins. So if he ever attacks twice, you're in super big money. But if he attacks once, you're okay. It's just a question of how often does he actually ever attack twice. I think you can say B, but if you do, you want to be prepared with your deck to find ways to make him survive that combat. And if you can find ways to make him survive that first combat, then you're really doing well. Well, apparently I've been broadcasting audio in one channel. Let's see if I can fix this. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Am I in both channels now? All right, well, that was an exciting experience there of learning how to set the settings on OBS. See, the little trick here is that OBS just shows me a single meter, which gives me which tells me how loud things are, but it doesn't bother to tell me where the audio is going on both channels. And one of my devices here is only setting things up to one channel, so I'll figure that out when I get it. But for now, Krenko, what was Krenko doing? So the point being with Krenko is that if you can protect him, he's definitely worth more. That's what you need to think about. You need to build around him. So Mizium Tank is the only one of the vehicles that I really like. They got it at a B- here. It's a 3/2, and if you just crew it as a 3/2, it's not good enough at all. 3/2 Trample. But if you're casting spells and making it a 4/3, then it's plenty good. It could easily be a 5/4 when attacking. 6/5, whatever. So I don't know. Actually, thinking about it, C+ is the big number. I like that. C+. I like that. Makes me happy. But there's a range. Just think about it with your deck. Nahiri Stoneblades is a pretty low set of numbers, and I agree. Up to 2 target creatures get +2, +0 each, but you can't, unless you've got a bunch of first strike already wired in, you're not saving any creatures. You're just, so combat tricks that don't save creatures just aren't that great. So it's like a D card. Neheb Dreadhorde Champion. Now this guy's got a B+. He's a lot like the gods, except he doesn't live. But he's got a spectacular set of stats. 4 mana, 5/4, trample. And, if he deals... if he deals combat damage to a player, they discard... You may discard any number of cards. If you do, draw that many cards and not much red. It's not really that great of an ability. It's not. It's fine. It's okay. It's not that spectacular. But it does allow you to cycle through your hand pretty quick. It's decent. It's the mana part that's kind of like, whatever. It can do something though in the right deck. You're looking for this low curve deck where you'll actually get a lot quickly out of doing this. Mostly though, he's a 4 mana 5/4 trampler, which is really great. So B+, almost he doesn't survive like the gods do, but he's just in many ways he's just a better set of stats than just about anything in the set with trample. Raging Crunch. Oh man, I got a Raging Crunch. Can't attack alone. It's a 3 mana 4/3. People have this at a C+. It just depends on the set. I'm concerned that there will not be enough going wide to make this easily. I mean, it just depends. If it's things are slow, then you'll get the going wide you want to make it. But I don't think there are enough token makers. You see, amass only creates like 1 token every time. So then again, maybe 1's just enough. So 3 C+ to C. It depends, and just do not overload on crunches. Yes, technically, you 2 crunches can attack. It also doesn't have. It doesn't have the block alone stat. You know what? Actually, C+. I didn't notice it doesn't have the block alone clause on it as well. That's real good. Samus's Sprint. Samus. All right, Samus. What game are we on? I don't like this nearly as much as people do. A creature gets +2, +1. +1 is not a lot to save a creature. This is not getting a counter. Gains haste. Just don't care very much. Scry 1. That's nice. I feel like the card is... I think people want the card more because they want that instant to trigger all the instant stuff, but it's so low value. I don't know. D+. Sarkhan the Masterless, we're making one of our rare planeswalkers. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, each dragon you control deals 1 damage to that creature. Well, we better generate some dragons. So it's a 5 mana, 5 loyalty planeswalker. The -3 does generate a dragon creature, and the +1 turns Sarkhan into a dragon until end of turn, which won't really help you on the damage part. So it's like you can drop him and drop a dragon right away, and then try to get a second dragon built up over time. But either way, 5 mana for a 4/4 red dragon is plenty good enough with lots of bonuses. So, I like this card an awful lot. I think this is just an A. There's just so much. They have to get rid of it. This is what you want in a planeswalker. Planeswalker they just have to get rid of. A planeswalker that can do damage on its own. And it, does it defend itself in a couple of different ways? Yes. So we have Sarkhan's Lava Axe, and it's an instant for 5 mana, so it's kind of better. It deals 5 damage to a player or a planeswalker. C minus, but know your deck. It's going to be real good in some decks, and know that this card, because this is a common, it's going to be out there all the time, and you've got to watch your life total. If your life total, there are times where you'll need to make stupid decisions to not get your life total under 5 when you're facing a red player. Just something to think about. Spellgorge are weird. It's interesting that both weirds have each other in the picture. It's a 2-mana 2/2 or 3-mana 2/2, which is not good enough. But whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Spellgorger weird. C plus people have it. I like it at C plus. You'll build it up most likely often enough. You need 2 counters to make it really a great investment. So sometimes it just won't get. It'll just get dead before you can do anything. Tibalt. It's funny that the uncommon Tibalt is better than the original Mythic Tibalt, just because he's not terrible. 3 mana for 5 loyalty. Your opponents can't gain life. And -2, create a 1/1 red devil creature with, when this dies, deals 1 damage to any target. But it's not great. People have it at C+. I think you really want to have this in the deck where you can kind of proliferate or something in order to get a 3rd red devil out of it. But 1/1 red devils that deal 1 damage are kind of, once again, there's a ton of stuff that deals 1 damage to just about any target. Or like when Tibalt's Ranger dies. This is why these 1 toughness things are creatures are such a liability. I kind of feel this is more of a C than a C+. There's kind of a disagreement on that. But it's a 2-mana 1/2, which would be bad, but it deals 1 damage to any target when it dies, which makes it kind of like a 2/2. Kind of better, kind of worse, but it also has fire breathing-ish, 1 red +2/+0. That's fine. That's fine. Maybe it's a C+, maybe I'm not thinking about it enough. It just feels like baseline as opposed to, Turret Ogre has too much text for what it is, but 4 mana, 4/3 reach. Okay, sure. That's a C. When Turret Ogre enters the battlefield, if you control another creature with power 4 or greater, Turret Ogre deals 2 damage to each opponent. So what? It's just like the tiniest bonus. I felt like it was a C before. I feel like having another power 4 is uncommon enough, and just it's such a minor bonus. Whatever. Let's get into the green. Arboreal Grazer. It is a 0/3 reach for 1 green, which is kind of a sideboardy thing, maybe, with helicopter flying by, finally coming for me. When Arboreal Grazer enters the battlefield, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. I don't care. It's not something I want to spend a lot of time doing. It's a big expense to get that done, just to get nothing. It's like a D. Everyone just about likes it like a D. Arlen, Voice of the Pack. 6 mana, 7 loyalty. Create a 2/2 green wolf creature for -2, but whenever a wolf or werewolf enters the battlefield with any one of those enters the battlefield with a +1/+1. So effectively, it's creating 3/3 wolves. You're gonna get, if you get 2 out of it, then you've kind of met. But you can get 3. It's a little slow for what it does, but C+, B-, yeah. You can just get a lot out of it, and your opponent's going to have to kind of take care of it. So, maybe it's a B-. It's just slow, though. But, creating 3/3s. Arlen's Wolf is a... why do people give this a C and they give other stuff? Anyway. It was C+, that is. It's a 3/2, can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. It's still just a C. It's just a C. Don't give it a C plus. There's nothing going on here. Awakening of Vitu-Ghazi. It's 5 mana. You make a creature a land and stick 9 +1/+1 counters on it. So it's a 9/9 creature for 5. I've been thinking a lot about this. It doesn't give it trample or anything, but it's like B plus, A minus. It's just it does give it haste. Okay, that's something even the gods don't do, is just give haste to the thing. There's just a lot of ways to just win the game. Now, you kind of effectively need 6 mana to get the haste out of it because it doesn't untap. Something to think about. Band Together. I really like Band Together. It's a double punch card, and it's an instant. Up to 2 creatures you control, so you don't even have to have 2, each deal damage equal to their power to another target creature. I think this is a very powerful kill spell. Allows you to kill things bigger than what you have, which is something that punch cards don't normally do. It allows you to have safely kill something by killing something with 2 things bigger than a creature. I think this is just a pure B. Maybe even a B plus, just because an instant. You still need the creatures though to kill them though, so maybe it's not a B plus. Yeah. Bloom Hulk. It's a 4 mana 4/4 that proliferates when it enters the battlefield. That's 4 mana 4/4s are already pushing past a C plus. So B minus, sure, I like that. Bond of Flourishing. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. You gain 3 life. So you want your deck to have a very low number of non-permanents, which is very doable in green in this set because you never want to miss. But it's not really it costs 3 to look at 3 cards, so it's not really great. You gain 3 life is whatever. But, I don't know, I feel like I'm more of like a C minus. A lot of people like C minus. It's filler. Centaur Nurturer is 2/4. You gain 3 life when it's a battlefield, which matters to some extent. Again, it's just not matters that much. Add 1 mana of any color. I'm torn on if this guy ends up being a C or a C plus. It's like 4 mana generator, but I think he may be important enough to the strategy. Challenger Troll. He's a 5 mana 6/5, which is some great numbers, but he has the oddball. Each creature you control with power 4 greater can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. It's like people have him higher than a B minus. He's filling a big slot, but B minus, sure. Courage in Crisis. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, then proliferate as a sorcery for 3. I really don't like this card. D plus. I really do not like this. I just don't like not gaining cards. Evolution Sage. 3 mana for a 3/2. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under control, proliferate. So landfall, proliferate. People are going crazy on this card. It's like a C plus or a B minus. Finale of Devastation, I don't like. Search your library or graveyard for a creature mana cost X or less. So you're paying green X for a creature with a mana cost X. Put it on the battlefield. You better have some good things, cheap things to search up to do that. If you paid 10 or more, then just kind of win the game. And that's fine. It's a lot to just kind of, 10 or more, 12 mana win the game is, like that I just don't even like, I feel like I'm way down here on this card. I just don't want to play this card. I could be wrong. I could be misunderstanding the card completely. Forced Landing, this is a sideboard card, but you should draft it. You might want to draft it fairly high, but you might main deck it. I think you probably main deck it in Sealed. It'll handle some gods. or one god. Not that you should be thinking that much about that. Just handling mythics is not your main. Sometimes you just lose to mythics. Giant Growth, C+. It's an oldie but a goodie. It's bigger than most combat tricks for 1 mana. So C+, probably. Yeah, it could be a C as well, just range. Ronus. Ronus is kind of interesting in that 5 mana, 5/5 Death Touch. Not really as good as some of the other gods, but when he enters the battlefield, double the power of each other creature you control, and those creatures gain vigilance. I mean, that's good, although doubling the power isn't necessarily as good as you might think. I don't know. I don't like it as much as the other gods. Even though just getting that effect repeatedly every 3 turns, that's nice, but or it just stays alive. And I mean, the Death Touch makes it really tough to deal with. You can't chump it or whatever. Jiang Yanggu, our card created for the Chinese market. There's like a motion picture now. I'm certainly not bothered by the, in any way by the addition of, Chinese Planeswalker. It just does feel, it does feel the specific level, just like motion pictures of the adding things which only make sense in the Chinese market, just specifically to get, to deal with the Chinese funding and to get past, local stuff, always just feels weird. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter has add my mana of any color, -1. I don't really like this card. I really don't. It's like people have it much higher than me. I just don't like it. It's like 3 +1/+1 counters over 3 turns, but you really can't do that if you want to keep the mana going, and you need the mana on another D+. I don't know. I'm at the bottom. Crawl Stinger. 3 mana, 2/2 Death Touch. He's a C. We're gonna wrangle our crunches now. So he's a 2/1, and whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, +1 counter. I think he's a C. He's weak on his own, but be well built around to create something that's okay. But it'll never be, you probably won't be very spectacular. He's fragile as well. Easy chance to die before he ever gets built up. Mo, Loyal Companion, the other Chinese market card. Okay. People are stupid. At its heart, this is a 3/3 Trample Vigilance card, which is a hill giant with Trample and Vigilance is still a hill giant. That's like a C-, maybe D+, C-. I want to say D+. And all he does is whenever he gets a +1/+1 counter, any number of +1/+1 counters, he gets 1 extra one. So you already have to stick +1/+1 counters on him to get him that 1 bonus one. That's all he gets is 1 bonus +1/+1 counter if you get +1/+1 counters on him. This card is not good. It's like a C- to a D+. He's not a good card. New Horizons is fine. You can get a +1/+1 counter. You can stick on Mobu, which will give you 2 +1/+1 counters. The problem with New Horizons is that it's kind of expensive. It's 3 mana to, a land. It produces an extra mana, and it produces 2 mana of any 1 color, which is great. Not 2 mana of any 2 colors, which would be really great. But I think it could even be a C+ because it's so important for certain archetypes and certain if you're playing 5-color green, like the official archetype is green black 5-color, which is just stupid. It just means they didn't bother to make green black, and it means there's a green 5-color. So, do we see anything which makes us believe that black is participating in the 5-color part? You want to be the Nissa who shakes the world? That was terrible. I couldn't do it. 5 mana, 5 loyalty, Planeswalker. When you tap a forest for mana, a forest, add an extra green. Remember that only half your land is going to be forest, potentially less if you're playing 5-color. But for +1, you can make a land into a 3/3 creature, and you untap it, which means you can add extra mana, but people online were really caught up on that. And if you can reach 8, you can make all those lands indestructible, and search for any number of forest cards and put them on the battlefield tapped. So you can stick all your forests if you have any left. B+, sure. Generating 3/3 creatures every turn is fairly potent. The mana stuff is decent. For what you get, it's much more like a traditional Planeswalker in terms of like normal value. So it's like a Planeswalker with one really crappy ability. The way it works. Don't analyze that statement too much. Nissa's Triumph. For Nissa's March through Rome, she gets to search for 2 basic forests. If you control a Nissa Planeswalker, instead do a Happy Dance. So you just get 2 forests into your hand. If you're playing heavily on green, this could be a thing, but you usually won't be, so like a D+. Take me down to the Paradise Druid. So Paradise Druid is 2 mana for a 2/1 that adds 1 mana of any color, which would probably be good enough to say something already, but as long as it's untapped, aka until you use it the first time, it has hexproof. So you're basically going to get 1 hit out of it before they can do stuff. B- they have it as, it's also a 2/1, so it can be used as a thing once it's, usefulness is gone. It will be fragile once that hexproof is off, though. It'll probably be Chandra's whatever it is, to death. So, yeah, B-, sure, maybe even a B, but I don't really know if I want to go that far. Yeah, plain wide celebration. Plain white tease celebration. It's what you do for me. So you choose 4. You may choose the same more than once. It's 7 mana, so it's better do a lot. And you get to choose from the following 4 times. You can create a 2/2 citizen token that's all colors. Should be like an Ewok token. Maybe a Coruscantian token. You can return target permanent card from your graveyard to your permanent hand. You can proliferate, which seems like the least exciting one of these by far, or you can gain 4 life. The gain 4 life is nice. Like, generally you're going to be like making 2/2s or returning permanents depending on where you are. And it does, and the 4 life is like if you're so far behind you're going to die, you could create a couple of citizens and then gain 8 life. It's 7 mana, sure. B-, sure. It's what you decent, nice thing to get out of 7 mana. Maybe even a little better because that green deck is going to generate that mana. Polymbright Druid. 1 and a green. When it enters, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, including itself, or proliferate. People have it as a C+. I don't know. It just feels... I know it's got a lot of options in a sense, but it's still just a C, because oftentimes you're going to have to take the boring option of and given the amount of time you take the boring option, it may just be a C. Primordial Worm is a 6 mana 7/6 because apparently we don't get Colossal Dreadmaws on this plane, and that's too bad because this is much worse than Colossal Dreadmaw. It's C- to D+ range. It may be better because green produces a lot of mana. Return to nature. It's no naturalize. It's a little better. 1 on a green, you can destroy an artifact, an enchantment, or exile a card from a graveyard. Here's the thing. This card is really bad because you rarely ever want to do any of those things. You can say exile a card. There's a moment where you can exile a god, and maybe you side it in for that. But this is like you'll have it at the end of the pack. It's like a D-, D maybe. Just there aren't enough enchantments to hold up the rest of the bargain. So Snare Spinner. It's a 1/3 with reach for 2, but if it blocks a flying creature, it turns into a 3/3. I feel like it's a C-. People give it a C. It's very average. I think you may need it more just to handle the flying attack, but the problem is when you're not facing the flying attack, it's real bad. Steady Aim, a untapped creature, give it +1/+4 and reach. Like if you're gonna give it reach, give it like enough to kill something. Whatever. People have it as a D+. Sure, it's 1 on a green, D+. Storm the Citadel. Okay. For 5 mana, it's a sorcery that says, until end of turn, creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain nothing of any value at all. You can destroy an artifact or an enchantment when you deal combat damage. This is a terrible anthem. Oh, gosh. Oh, I hate this card. Oh, gosh. People are seeing this card and they don't... Oh, this is a terrible anthem. So many better anthems that are instant speed or just for 5 mana +2/+2 anthem in a D to D-. Come on, guys. Thundering Ceratok. We have a 4/5 critter for 5, which isn't really good enough in green, even with trample. Yeah, and it enters the battlefield. Other creatures you control get trampled in a turn. I just don't care that much about that C- to D+. It's just I want so much more out of my green creatures. Okay, Vivien, Champion of the Wild. You may cast creature spells as though they had flash. That's nice, but I'm paying a whole 3 mana and a card for this. Until your next turn, up to 1 creature gains Religions of Reach for +1. That's nice, but I'm paying a whole card and 3 mana for this. And then -2, look at the top 3 cards of your library, exile 1 face down. As long as it remains exiled, you may look at the card, cast it. I don't think this card is very good. I think this card is way overrated by people. As long as you can only do it with creatures, the exile part. I mean, you do get to keep the creature forever, though. I just feel like it's a B-. I just don't think this card does anything. I mean, it does stuff. I just don't think it does nearly like. It's only the -2 that really does anything exciting. The rest of it is so like you spent a card for this. Vivien's Arcbow. X, discard a card. Look at the top X cards of your library. You can put a creature card with converted mana cost extra among them in your battlefield. Put the rest. I don't like this. I feel like it's expensive and clunky. I mean, it kind of works. I don't know. C+. I'd just rather not deal with it. Let someone else draft it. Vivien's Grizzly. This is not a C+. This ability is super expensive for what it is. can't, just, it's a C. Card's a C. Ward Seal Crocodile, 5 mana for a 5/3 hexproof. It's a C. All right, so I will get into multicolored in just a moment. I will be right back. All right, where was I? Johnny the Great-Hearted. 4 mana for 5 loyalty. Creatures you control have vigilance. So what? You gain 3 life. So what? It's what you're getting it for is put a -2, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and a loyalty counter on each other planeswalker you control. People have it at a B+. Gosh, it's like it's got one ability just to increase the, and I don't know. I feel like it's more of a B. Maybe it's a B+. Maybe it's just that much better. It doesn't feel like it's an A range. Angar's Rampage. I think this is actually a pretty decent card, red and a black. For you can either make him sacrifice an artifact, which you won't, a creature, or a planeswalker, which you will. It's players usually don't have that many planeswalkers, and especially it's easy to hit planeswalkers with it, but it just gives there's a decent amount of flexibility here for something where your opponent gets to make the choice. So B-, probably. Bioessence Hydra. It's a weird one. It's 5 mana, 4/4 trample on its own, and oftentimes it will just be that. It gets a +1/+1 counter for each loyalty counter on any planeswalker you control, and every time you put a loyalty counter on a planeswalker, it gets another +1/+1. That's nice and all, but you can have one huge creature. It doesn't really do anything to protect itself. I don't know, B, sure. It's got trample though. Maybe it's a B+, but I feel like I want something with more reliable stats or faster or something. Casualties of War. It's great what it does and that it can kill a creature and a planeswalker, but it's super expensive to do that. And even if it catches both and it gets a land, it's whatever because you already have 6 mana. B-. Cruel Celebrant. C+, sure. It's kind of like your aristocratic creature, and there are certain decks that want to sacrifice. So, sure, it'll grind out certain victories. Death Sprout B. I think it's a B- because the casting cost is so very difficult, and getting a basic land matters so little. D Spark. What do people have this at a B? I like this more of a B-. Maybe even worse. It's kind of limited. Yes, it kills the biggest things, but yeah. Domri. For 3 mana, 3 loyalty, creatures you control get +1/+0. Okay. Yeah. 1, add red or green. Creature spells you control this turn may be countered. Yeah, it's, fine. It's generating mana. Okay. And negative -2, creature you control fights target creature you don't control. Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good package. I actually like that a lot. B+, could, is anything, it's just not really generating whole cards, but it's just doing an awful lot. So B+, sure, definitely. Domri's Ambush. I don't like this art. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, and that creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. So it's a punch card, and B to B-. I think people aren't counting the fact it's 2 colors, but it's green, so I guess that makes it easier to cast. Dovin's Veto. This just seems like it's rated, C- to D+. It's a harder to cast negate with a clause that just doesn't matter. Dreadhorde Butcher. In the deck that it wants to be in, it can be pretty good. It's just a question of if it's like a C+ or a B-. It's hard to get through a second time, but it's like easy to get through that first time to get that first counter. So it doesn't have any trample or anything. But if you get through, it's really good because you got this thing that's going to die and deal 2 damage to something. Elite Guard Mage. This is a great card. 4 mana, 2/3 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3 life and draw a card. That is just a wonderful card. That is a great card. It's like, I think that's like a B+ in some ways, but maybe it's not really as unbeatable as other things. So maybe it's just a B. It's hard to say exactly. I'll just, Enter the God Eternals. People really like this card. It only deals 4 damage for 5 mana, which is really an expensive removal spell. But you get to amass 4, so I don't know. I feel like this is more like a worse. This is worse than your Ravenous Chupacabra in a lot of ways, just because it just can't kill everything, even if it gets a bigger creature on the other end. So, I don't know. It feels like a B to me. I think people are just treating it like you get a 4/4 creature and you kill a creature, and it's not. It's 5 mana. Feather the Redeemed. It's fine. It's a 3 mana 3/4, but it's tough to cast. And the ability just doesn't matter. I don't know. I honestly feel like it's like a B, but a B-. Gleaming Overseer does something really important. He's a 3 mana 1/4, and he amasses 1, which isn't doing a lot, but he gives the amass hexproof and menace both 2 bonuses. I think that's just super important for the amass deck, and I could easily be in the B+ range just in terms of a build around how important it is. Because you can drop it down and suddenly your opponent doesn't have the ability to use any, to kill your army anymore. And they don't have the ability to block your army. They have to block it with 2 things. That's just the 2 things other than the flying and the other one, that your amass army would want. Heartwarming Redemption. I think this is like a D. It's 4 mana, discard your cards, draw that many, gain that much life. You're not going to gain that much life. You're not going to, these cards are just barely playable. Discard all the cards in your hand. D, D-, F actually, probably. I don't think I ever want to play this card in this set because there's not enough, especially in red-white. It doesn't make sense. You have to have a bad hand of cards, or just have a whole pile of lands in your hand. And you're not going to have that in the red-white. I mean, unless you just drew terribly. It's like the card for only works when you draw terrible. Watley's Raptor, B minus. It's got a 2 for 2/3 vigilance when enters proliferate. Sure. Maybe it's just a C plus. It's not that spectacular, but you know, it's not bad. It's good. You'll always want it in that white green deck. Maybe that's because that white green deck is supposed to generate more counters. Whether or not it does, I don't know. Invade the City is Amass X, where Amass is the number of instant or sorcery cards in your graveyard for 3. Okay. I don't like cards that just purely amass and do nothing else. C minus, D plus. It may just create such a huge number in that red blue deck. It's worth it. 3 mana, 1 black, green for a 2/3. This is Leyline Prowler. Death Touch, Lifelink, add 1 mana of any color. It's such a weird combination of things to go together. Is it a B minus? Is it a B? It feels more like a B minus to. It feels disconnected. And it may be just even C plus because it's just the color requirements, but it does a lot for. It does a lot of different things that they don't really connect together at one time. B minus, yeah. Living Twister, red, green, 2/5, okay. Discard a land card, deals 2 damage to any target, return a tapped land you control to its owner's hand. I mean, this could easily be this is really, you can just do a lot of damage with this card, and you can get it down early on and then start going. But I don't know that. It's just kind of funny because I don't know that red green is exactly the right deck that wants to throw its lands away. But I don't know. B to B plus because it can probably do a lot. Mayhem Devil is an interesting card. So the 3 mana 3/3 is probably already a C plus. So for that reason, this additional ability, Sacrifice, you can kind of build around it. I've already seen it done, and deal 1 damage to any target. I think it's a B minus because of that. I think a pure raw good, well anyway. And Merfolk Skydiver. We'll go skydiving. We'll go Rocky Mountain proliferating. It's 2 mana, green blue for a 1/1 flyer. But when it enters the battlefield, you get to put a +1/+1 encounter any target creature. So it can be a 2/2 flyer, or you put it somewhere else, and it can proliferate. I think this card's a solid B. I think it's like the green blue creature. Counter adding seems great. Neoform. This allows you to turn into Keanu Reeves and dodge bullets. That was a very funny joke. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature. Again, search for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. Put that card in the battlefield with additional +1/+1 counter and shuffle your library. I think this is terrible. I don't think this is something you want to do. You have to have something very special to bring out in order to do this, so you need to have a god or something. Otherwise, it's just plain terrible. Even if you have a god, you need to have the mana to cast it later. Because just by itself, this is a 2-for-1. You're 2-for-1ing yourself. And that just seems bad business. D. Nicol Bolas. Now, I think this card's great. It's just a little tough to cast, but this card does kind of everything. It has all loyalty abilities of all other planeswalkers, so it does kind of everything. You draw a card for +1. It's 5 mana for a 4, so it's a little light. It's a little killable. So +1, draw a card, and each opponent exiles a card from your hand or a permanent they control, which gives them a lot of choices, but that's a pretty great +1. just immediately. -3, destroy target creature or planeswalker. That's a pretty great -3. It's expensive though, so you won't be able to expend it very much. -8, each player who doesn't control a legendary creature or planeswalker loses the game. That's an alternate wins condition you can actually deploy with this card. The 3 black is the only thing that's really difficult with this card, but I just think it's an A+. I just think this to me is an obvious just win. You know, just does, it's just, this is like, it's got the pure Planeswalker A+ of draw a card, but it's better, or destroy, or minus to destroy a creature, and a game-winning, literally, ult. So, Niv Mizzet Reborn. People are giving this an F. I don't think this is not an F. Other people are giving this a D. It's much more of a D. So this ability, right, it's a 6/6 for 5 flying. If you're playing 5-color green, then it's a playable card, and that's a thing. But even in 5-color green, you're probably only going to get 1 to 2 cards off of this top 10 for each color pair card. That's exactly. But it's not an F. This is not an F. It's playable. It's playable in the right deck. And in that right deck, it's, 6/6 flyer wins the game. It's a 5-color deck. You just have to build a 5-color deck. And so that makes it not an F. So a D or something, because you'll just let it drift. Oath of Kaya. So Kaya is joining the Gatewatch, and it's not bad. I think it's a little overrated here in people's ratings, just because. So it's 1 blue-black, 3 damage to any target, and you gain 3 life. But the 3 life is kind of not important that much compared to the 3 damage to any target. But it's 3 damage to any target for 1 white-black. For that reason, I just want to put it at a B-, just because it's not like one of these red spells that'll go in any deck. And whenever an opponent attacks a planeswalker with 1 or more creatures, it deals 2 damage. I just don't care that much about this clause. It's there. It's decent. But it still wants me to put it at a B-. Maybe I should put it at a B for that. Pledge of Unity. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. You gain 1 life for each creature you control. Yay, great. I don't know. There's so many better ways to do it, like the Ajani. C. It's an instant, though. It's an instant. I forget. It's an instant. So it's a combat trick. C+. Rahl Storm Conduit. Okay, so 4 mana, 4 mana, 4 loyalty. Whenever you cast or copy an instant spell, deals 1 damage to the target opponent or planeswalker. It's okay, but not worth. +2, it's not worth that much. +2, scry 1. And then -2, whenever you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. B-, C+. It's maybe you can't get stuff out of it the first turn. You get up to 6 the first turn when you scry, but scrying 1 is it's a lot to have a scrying device. I don't know, B-, actually. It's a lot of not affecting the board state. But, you can copy some Rahl's Outbursts. And this is a decent card. It's same cost as Rahl. You deal 3 damage to any target. It's an instant. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put 1 in your one in your graveyard. So you get to Lightning Bolt and Opt taped together and add, 2 mana. But that's not bad. It's a cantrip Lightning Bolt. It works well for that blue-red deck. It's very much what they want. I just don't know range if it's a B+ or B-. Here's a card people are way overrating. I've already seen it in play to know. It's 2 green-blue for a 4/5, and you put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control. But maybe those creatures don't end up on another creature. Okay, that's the problem. And it's just not an A+ card. And when it dies, you proliferate and you proliferate. That's great if you have creatures. but there's a good chance you don't, and it doesn't do anything. This is a really good card, but it's not some kind of unbeatable A plus monster. A minus, yeah, it's, you know, in many ways it's really about the 4/5 and 2+1/+1 counters, and yeah, it can also get exiled, and you know, in multiple different ways. Role reversal, I don't like this card at all. It's a 2-for-1. In order to upgrade a worse creature to a better creature, or a worse planeswalker to a better planeswalker. I just think this is like C-, D+. Rebelboat Rioters is kind of interesting. I need to understand it. You kind of need to figure out your deck. You need to have the creatures with a bunch of toughness to make it work. Because it's a real silly haste if you play it on turn 3 and it attacks as 0/4. So I almost feel it may be, it's kind of hard. Is this really a C+, or is it really a C? I don't like Solar Blaze. I don't like this. You have to build your deck around the effect, and even then, will it hurt your opponent? I don't know. I want to like make it a D. I don't. It's just like, is this really going to hurt your opponent, or is it going to hurt you more? People seem to be loving this card. I don't. It's so situational. It doesn't say each creature your opponent goes. Each creature deals damage as it eats to its power. Sorin, Vengeful Bloodlord. As long as it's your turn, creatures and planeswalkers you control have lifelink. That's really nice. Sorin, Vengeful Bloodlord deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. You gain 1 life. That's not great. It's kind of a weak thing, but it's a +2. And then -X, return target creature card with converted mana X to the battlefield, and it's a vampire now. People out as a B. It's hard because it does so little right away unless you put a creature up. That might be enough to make it, you know, B+. This is a tough set. I just want to note this is one of the toughest evaluation sets. Soul Diviner. It's a 2/3 for 2. Now, the thing with this card is you have to figure out how many counters you're going to have around. Now, for example, you could pull the counters off the Amass creature to draw a card. You can just, for some reason, you can't pull it off enchantments. I know why you can't pull it off enchantments. It's the sagas. It doesn't want you to trigger a saga again. That's funny. That would be great. So it's nothing to do with limited. But there's practically no enchantments here to care about. You could, and like 2/3 for blue and black, that's already a decent card, but I think you can draw a lot of cards with this in that blue-black deck. I think you can keep drawing cards an awful lot. And so B- seems like a reasonable option. Maybe even a B. Maybe it is a B. You just get so many cards. If you can card every turn, it's spectacular for 1 counter that you can just dispose of. In that Amass deck, if you build the Amass around it. So 5/4 for 1 green, 1 black green trample, great, already great. B+. When it deals damage to combat damage to a player planeswalker, return target creature to your hand, target creature or planeswalker card in your graveyard that wasn't put there this combat. Sure, it's B+ to A-. It's spectacular, dangerous, amazing card. Tomio, Collector of Tales. DuckTales, woo! Spells, abilities, you can't sacrifice permanents or discard cards. Choose an online card name, +1. If you name it right, I'm on top 4, you get to take it. That's terrible. And -3, return target cards from your graveyard to your hand. That's okay, but it's kind of slow, kind of clunky. It's like a C-, D+, I think. Teferi, Time Raveler. If I could save time in a ravel. Okay. So for one white blue, really affordable. Each opponent can only cast spells on time you cast sorcery, and his +1 is kind of like he has a second continuous ability until your next turn. You may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. All that really doesn't do very much. It just doesn't do very much. And for the 3, you can unsummon an artifact, creature, or enchantment. Not a planeswalker, but you draw a card. And that's fine. Honestly, to me, B- to C+, I don't know. I just don't know if you get... Just like the flash and non-flash stuff in Limited just doesn't do that much. It'll shut down certain cards, instants that are combat related, but you don't get anything out of it unless you start unsummoning and then you weaken him greatly. 10th District Legionnaire, he's got Heroic, put a +1/+1 counter on him. He's got Haste, he's a 2/2, and when also the Heroic is a Scry 1. Sure, B- build around card. Time Wipe, return a creature you control to your own's hand, destroy all other creatures, and it costs a Wrath of God +blue. Sure, that's great. That returning a creature to your hand makes the chance of getting an advantage to be much higher. Although the planeswalkers will make a difference. B+, A-, something like that. Talisman your friends to wolves, either 3/3, and when you enter the battlefield, you create a 3/3 wolf, and whenever a wolf enters the battlefield, you get 3 life, and that wolf fights another creature you don't control, if you want to, and that's great. You allow it to B+, sure, absolutely. In some ways, it's like one of the cards that actually guarantees value, one of the few that actually guarantees value at this legendary level. Tyrant Scorn, really solidly fixed at a B-. It's an unsummon combined with a thing that destroys creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. It's great. It shows it destroying an army, a mass eternal guy here, and that's great. It's great. B-, B+, something like that. It's very heavily in demand if you're going to be in blue-black. That was weird. Bet the buttons are under myself, otherwise I'm really seeing. Widespread Brutality is at a B+. I'm going to put it at a B-. 1 black, red. Amass, then the army you amass deals damage equal to the power to each non-army creature. I've already seen this card be a complete bust. So I just think it requires more setup and there's a certain amount of risk involved. Your opponent can destroy the army and suddenly you don't deal damage to everybody. It's a lot if you're just going to do a Pyroclasm. So I don't know. It feels more like a B-. I'm not saying it's not good. I just don't think it's as good as people think. Angrath, Champion of Chaos. 2 hybrid with red-black. Creatures you control have menace. That's nice. -2, amass 2. That's nice. B, sure. Ashiok, Dream Render. Huge realm on this one with a lot of chunks in the F. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library. I don't care. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into the graveyard, then exile the opponent's graveyard. It's got 5 loyalty, and that's a -1. That means he can dump up to 20 cards over... He just does nothing to the battlefield. This card is not an F, okay? But it's probably a D or build around or whatever. You need to be going into a long control-y game where... But you got to understand, it can dump 20 cards. That's a huge number of cards. It's just there are so many decks where this will just be a complete waste of time or counterproductive sometimes. So maybe it's even higher than that. It's just like 20 cards, you know. So I mean do the math, right? If you manage to complete the 5-turn Ashiok, okay, you'll have dumped 20 cards, okay, right? Plus, they already drew 7 cards to start the game, okay? They had to have drawn at least 2 cards, okay? 29 cards, okay? Plus, you have at least 5 cards once it gets to their turn drawn with the Ashiok in play. Okay? So 29 plus 5 is 34. You're only 6 cards away from winning if you've gone through an entire Ashiok. Do you think maybe you had, you found 6 more turns? So if you're going to go for the mill strategy, if it's a control-y game, okay, then Ashiok is going to do something for you, okay? I don't like mill strategies in general. It's not my thing. I just don't like it. But there's to ignore the amount that goes on here. Yes, it takes 5 turns to do that. Yes, you have to be not dying other ways, right? But this card, it might be a great sideboard card, a great thing to bring in. Blue-black, it's not blue-black, it's blue or black. So blue-black isn't necessarily the deck that would want, to mill to win the game, but blue-white, maybe just Dovin, Hand of Control, 3 mana, 5 loyalty, artifact, instant, and sorcery spells your opponent's cast cost 1 more to cast, whatever. And -1 until next turn, prevent all damage to be dealt to and dealt by target permanent opponent controls. It's 5 turns of that. Seems okay. C plus maybe. I mean, yeah, he's going to run out, but it's 5 turns of essentially tapping down something. C. I don't know. Range of C to C plus to C minus. Huatli, Sun's Heart. Huatli, the Sun's Heart. 3, it's a 2 and a green-white hybrid for 7 loyalty, which makes it tough to kill, but you're going to drain it real quick. Each creature controls damage equal to toughness rather than power. A -3, you gain life equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control. I just don't care. You can build a deck, I'm sure, which makes this work. Oh, gosh. It's like a D, though. It's just somebody's deck will make it work. And in so many other decks, it's just like a blank. Just like the biggest blank. Kaya, Bane of the Dead. So 3 hybrid white-black, which means that it'll be really tough to cast in a non-white-black deck, but in just pure white or black. Your opponents and permanents your opponents control with hexproof, basically gets rid of hexproof on your opponent. 3 exile target creature. 7, you get to squish 2 things. You'll have this at a B. I think it could, it's very slow, but it exiles 2 things, which is great. So B plus, very much potential. It's just like 2 removal spells over 2 turns, and maybe you can build up to a 3rd removal spell, and it gets rid of the hexproof, which barely matters here, but will occasionally matter. Kiora, Boring Beckoner, 2 and blue-green. 7 loyalty. Whenever a creature with power 4 enters the battlefield, draw a card. -1 untapped target permanent. Know your deck. Maybe you can get it to work. I feel like it's a C plus though, because I feel like it's much more limited in the decks that it works in, and it does not affect the battlefield when it comes into play. It's just no tempo, tempo loss. A lot of tempo loss on a lot of these planeswalkers. And maybe that's a reason to just run fast decks. You know, people, especially you come to your pre-release. You know, looking at myself in the camera, that was an optical illusion. I thought I looked good for a sec. Not really. Nahiri, Storm of Stone. 4, 2 hybrid, red, white. 6 loyalty. As long as it's your turn, creatures control have first strike. Okay, that's a lot to pay for that. And equip abilities you activate. There's no equipment in this set. Or I don't believe there's any equipment. So whatever. Minus X. Nahiri, Storm of Stone deals X damage to target tapped creature. C plus maybe. It's like, can you get 2 creatures off of this? It's going to take some work. Card I like a lot more in a sense is Saheeli's Sublime Artificer. And it's got 3 mana, 1 hybrid, red, blue, 5 loyalty, and it's got a silly -2, which allows you to copy artifacts. Copy creatures. Target artifact you control becomes a copy of another target artifact creature you control in the turn. So negatively turn artifacts into creatures, and that's fine because it goes with their other ability. I mean, it's not really great, but which is when you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 colorless server artifact creature token. And I think you can get a lot in that red-blue deck out of casting out of this ability. I think you can get a lot there. So B minus B range, maybe even B plus if it. I don't think you'll get B plus. I just don't think it's going to do enough. It's too slow. Samut Tyrant Smasher. 4, 2 hybrid green red. Creatures you control have haste. It's a bunch to pay for haste. And the thing always with that is, this is not nearly as good as the one in the last set. And target creature gets +2/+1 and gains haste until end of turn. The gains haste in just case it. Yeah, it's silly. It's just not even. And scry 1. And I just don't really like this card all that much. People have it as a C plus. It's, I don't know, C. I just don't even. Certainly wouldn't make me want to move into green red because I had Samut. Finally, Vraska, Swarm's Eminence. 2 green black for a 5. And whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals damage to a player or planeswalker, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. It just doesn't matter that much. I mean, it's fine. It's just one of those vampirism type abilities are always really iffy. And then -2, whenever you get a 1/1 black assassin token with Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals damage to a planeswalker, destroy that planeswalker. I think this is. I do think this is kind of like a B to B minus at range. I don't think it quite hits a B plus. It's slow for what it is, but being able to create 2 Death Touch tokens over 2 turns is pretty good, and it'll really slow down a lot of different assaults on you. Firemind Vessel. 4 mana, enters tapped, add 2 mana of different colors. I don't know. I think the range will vary based strongly on what deck you're in, but there's a lot of incentive for that. Particularly, this would be spectacular in your sealed deck. Be great in the green multicolor decks. So if you want to put it as C, or you want to put it, it's like 4 for 2 mana. It's just, it almost doesn't matter if it comes into play tapped because you just won't, use it. But it does matter, but it's not. I don't know. I like to see how that plays out. God Pharaoh statue, large range on this one. You see, I'm down at the very bottom, roughly. I might sight it in against certain opponents, but you just when you know that it's just gonna have to work out that way. But I just 6 mana to do all this. It's like when I play a 6 mana spell, it's just like, oh, I just slowed my opponent down a bit, and my opponent, it's like it's just not enough. It made you almost nothing, and so for cards, almost nothing. Maybe it's like sideboard, maybe, but Guild Globe's an interesting card. You know, I think C minus might be a reasonable number. You may not still want to play it all the time, but like in the decks that need to do multiple colors, it's a way to do it. Sacrifice Guild Globe, add 2 mana of 2 different colors. Sure. So it's cantrippy, so it might even be just a plain up C. Iron Bully is basically a 2/2 menace, except you can move that +1/+1 counter somewhere else. Yeah, C minus totally. It's like it's not really what you want to do, but it's a thing. See if there really is any equipment. Oops, I just lost the world. Oh man, what happened to the world? I have to like zoom to the end. Card. Here we go. Mana Geode. So there are a bunch of these artifacts that produce mana, right? So again, it's just like your multicolor needs will determine whether or not you're willing to like dump 3 mana on something which does practically nothing. Scry 1 when it enters to add 1 mana. If the format is slow, these things become much better. I don't like Prismite as a way of doing this, though. 2 mana, 2/1, add 1 mana of any color. It's really slow way to get the mana, but it's not the end of the world to play. But I just like that's not. Yeah, he's a creature and he can attack, but he just does such a bad job with the mana. Saheeli's Silverwing, I think, is a fine card. I think it's probably a C. I just think of 2/3 flying in this set with all the planeswalker killing that you might want to do. 2/3 flying, and it's got a completely stupid ability of to look at the top card of target opponent's library. But I think that's a C in this set. Blast Zone. Here's the thing about Blast Zone. It's really good, and it's slow, but you can put it in you can just put it in any deck, and it does enough. Like it's just this. So I just think the ability to put it in, the amount of the flexibility on it, yeah, it's a little slow, you can't take out armies with it without removing the counters, which you might be able to do. To me, it's like a B plus. I'm not sure that I'd take much over it, except for like the really monstrous creatures, gods or whatever. Emergence Zone, on the other hand, I don't care. I would not play this card. I would not play it on a bus. I would not play it with a guy named Gus. F. I don't like this kind of land. It's just, if you're going to give up the mana on a land, right? And note this one doesn't even come and play tapped. Then you should getting something really decent out of it. And it's not. Gateway Plaza listed as a C here. It might be slightly better just because of the multicolor needs in the set. We've seen this recently, and it's not bad. It's a little slow, but once again, I think the set's going to be a little slow. And the ability to add 1 mana of any color is great. Interplanar Beacon, I don't know. I don't think it's good enough to do anything. You would have to have a lot of planeswalkers to give up mana just for planeswalkers. And the way the planeswalkers are with all the hybrids, I just don't think that's that. Karn's Bastion, there are certain decks that really want to proliferate, which will probably be happy to have this. I don't think it's a B minus though. C plus, I suppose. Mobilized District, though, I could give a B minus to. I think it, once again, if you're trying to do the multicolor stuff, you don't want to, to give up too much, but this one is this one does, like, the land creature there's just so many advantages to it. So anyway, that's War of the Spark. I managed to make it all the way through for once. I'm really proud of myself. I only took 2 or 3 breaks. I only had the sound messed up for most of the entire time. I haven't paid attention to the chat at all because it's not set up to go. So sorry, Alec. And all right, and that's everything. Thanks.